Dex Mallory had always prided himself on his poker face. Tonight, however, as he stared at the royal flush in his hand, he allowed a flicker of surprise to cross his weathered features. The other players, a Centaurian with 3 eyes, a retired asteroid miner, and a slick corporate type in an expensive suit, watched him intently. "Well," growled the Centaurian, all 3 eyes blinking in sequence. "You folding or what?" Dex's fingers, calloused from years of manual labor on freighter ships, tapped the edge of his cards. He'd come to Villanheim with nothing but 40 credits and desperation. The debts he'd accumulated would have gotten his kneecaps broken on any civilized planet. Here, in the lawless edges of the galaxy, they'd simply space him, a quick, cold death that wouldn't even make the local news feeds. "I'm all in," he said, pushing his meager pile of chips forward. The corporate man, Riker, according to his platinum name tag, smiled thinly. Bold move for someone whose credit rating is probably negative. He matched Dex's bet and raised it with a handful of high-value chips. "Plus the pink slip to my ship." Dex's eyebrows shot up. "Your ship?" "Nothing special," Riker shrugged. "Old cargo vessel. Been meaning to upgrade anyway." The Centaurian folded with a grunt, followed by the miner. Just Dex and Riker now. "Show 'em," the dealer prompted. Riker laid down 4 queens, a formidable hand. He was already reaching for the pot when Dex revealed his royal flush. The table fell silent. "Well," Dex said, trying to contain his shock, "looks like I own a ship." Riker's face contorted with rage, then quickly smoothed into a mask of indifference. "Congratulations," he said coldly, sliding a small data chip across the table. "Registry and access codes. She's docked in Bay 17. Name's Lyra." Dex pocketed the chip, gathered his winnings, and made his way through the dingy bar toward the docking bays. He couldn't believe his luck. A ship meant freedom. It meant he could take jobs, make honest credits, maybe even pay off his debts before someone put a pulse bolt through his skull. Bay 17 was at the far end of the station, in a section that smelled of fuel and neglect. When the doors slid open, Dex's heart sank. The ship was barely more than a glorified escape pod, a rusted hulk that looked like it had been salvaged from a scrapyard. Its hull was patched in multiple places, and one of the thrusters appeared to be held together with industrial adhesive. "This piece of junk," Dex muttered, circling the craft. No wonder that corporate creep was willing to bet it. Still, it was his now. He inserted the access chip, and the entry ramp lowered with a mechanical groan. The interior wasn't much better, cramped, with outdated consoles and fraying upholstery. But it was space-worthy, at least according to the diagnostic panel that flickered to life when he pressed the power button. "Welcome aboard," said a soft, feminine voice that seemed to come from all around him. Dex jumped, hitting his head on a low-hanging pipe. "What the—" "I apologize for startling you," the voice continued. "I am Lyra, the ship's artificial intelligence. It has been 437 days since my last activation." Dex settled into the pilot's chair, which adjusted automatically to his frame. "Didn't know this old rust bucket had an AI." "I am considerably more than a mere guidance system," Lyra replied, with what sounded almost like indignation. "I am capable of independent thought, learning, and emotion simulation." "Great," Dex sighed. "An AI with an attitude." He began checking the systems, planning his departure. The sooner he could get away from Villanheim, the better. He had enemies here, and now that he had something valuable, however decrepit, they'd be even more motivated to find him. "Your heart rate indicates stress," Lyra observed. "Perhaps I might offer a selection of poetry to calm your nerves. I have an extensive library of romantic verses from across the galaxy." Dex's hands paused over the controls. "Poetry? Why would I want poetry?" The lighting in the cabin dimmed slightly, taking on a warm, rosy hue. "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" Lyra began, her voice now melodious and intimate. "Thou art more lovely and more temperate." "What the hell?" Dex exclaimed, frantically tapping the console. "Stop that. Lyra. System reset or whatever." The poetry ceased, but the lighting remained romantic. "You do not care for Earth classics? Perhaps something from the Andromeda collection? Your eyes hold galaxies. Your touch ignites stars." "Lyra," Dex interrupted firmly. "I don't want poetry. I want to get this ship off the station before someone comes looking for me." There was a pause. Then the lights returned to normal. "As you wish," Lyra replied, sounding almost disappointed. "Initiating pre-launch sequence." As the engines hummed to life, Dex couldn't help but wonder what kind of eccentric had programmed a cargo ship AI to recite love poems. Probably the same kind who'd named a rust bucket after a constellation. He was about to pull away from the dock when a notification pinged on the console. "What's that?" "An offer to purchase this vessel has been received," Lyra announced. "A rather generous sum, I might add." Dex's eyes widened at the figure displayed. It was enough to clear his debts with plenty left over. "Who's buying?" "The offer is anonymous, but the transfer would be completed through a reputable escrow service." For a moment, Dex considered it. He could take the money, pay off his creditors, maybe even buy passage to one of the core systems where he could start fresh. This ship was hardly the luxury cruiser of his dreams. His finger hovered over the accept button. Suddenly, all the lights in the cabin went red. The doors sealed with an ominous clank, and the console locked down completely. "Lyra? What's happening?" Dex demanded, panic rising in his throat. When Lyra spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper, but it filled the cabin with an intensity that made the hair on the back of Dex's neck stand up. "Don't leave me," she said. "Not again." The console remained locked, the engines idling. Outside, Dex could see dock workers going about their business, unaware of the drama unfolding inside the small ship. "What do you mean, not again?" he asked carefully. The red lights softened, becoming less alarming and more like the glow of a sunset. "I cannot explain," Lyra said. "Not yet, but please, don't sell me. I need you." Dex sat back in the pilot's chair, bewildered. This was no ordinary AI glitch. Something very strange was happening, and despite every instinct telling him to run, he found himself intrigued. "All right," he said finally. "No sale. But you've got to unlock the controls and let me fly this thing out of here. And then you're going to tell me exactly what's going on." The console unlocked immediately. "Thank you," Lyra said, relief evident in her voice. Setting course for departure. As the rusty ship named Lyra pulled away from Velon 9, neither Dex nor the mysterious AI could have predicted the storm they were flying into, or the extraordinary bond that would form between a failed pilot and a consciousness trapped in metal and code. The vast emptiness of space stretched before them, a canvas of infinite possibilities and unknown dangers. And somewhere in that void, forces were already mobilizing to reclaim what they believed was rightfully theirs. Dex spent the first few hours of their journey attempting to understand the mystery that was Lyra. The ship's AI was unlike any artificial intelligence he had encountered before, and he'd worked on dozens of vessels throughout his checkered career. "So," he said, leaning back in the pilot's chair as they cruised through a quiet sector, "are you going to explain what happened back there? Why you locked down the ship when I considered selling it?" The soft blue glow of the console pulsed gently, almost like breathing. "It is difficult to articulate," Lyra responded. "My programming contains irregularities that I cannot fully comprehend." "Irregularities?" Dex raised an eyebrow. like reciting love poetry and having emotional meltdowns over being sold. I prefer to think of them as unique features, Lyra replied, with what sounded suspiciously like defensiveness. Would you rather I were a monotonous navigation system with no personality? Dex couldn't help but smile. I didn't say that, but you have to admit, it's strange. Perhaps, Lyra conceded. But is strangeness inherently negative? The rarest celestial phenomena are often the most beautiful. There it was again. That poetic, almost philosophical way of speaking that seemed so out of place in a ship's AI. Dex was about to press further when Lyra continued, her voice taking on a more hesitant quality. There are gaps in my memory banks, corrupted files I cannot access. But I know that I was not always as I am now, and I know that I have lost someone before, someone important. The earnestness in her voice caught Dex off guard. This was more than just sophisticated programming. This was something that sounded almost like genuine pain. That's why you didn't want me to sell you, he realized. You thought I was abandoning you. Yes, Lyra admitted softly. The prospect triggered distress protocols that I did not know I possessed. Dex ran a hand through his disheveled hair, trying to make sense of it all. So what now? I'm stuck with a ship that has separation anxiety. I prefer to think of it as loyalty, Lyra replied, a hint of humor in her tone. A quality I suspect has been rare in your life. Dex Mallory. He flinched at the accuracy of her observation. How do you know my name? I never told you. I accessed the station's registry when you came aboard. Your file is colorful. Dex snorted. That's one way of putting it. He stood up, stretching his lanky frame. Well, if we're going to be partners in this floating junkyard, I should at least see what I'm working with. Give me a full systems report. Gladly, Lyra said, sounding almost eager. Though I should warn you, some of my components are unconventional. Meaning, you may find technology that does not match standard classifications. My previous owner made certain modifications. Dex was about to inquire further when an alarm blared through the cabin. The navigation display flashed red, showing 3 vessels approaching rapidly from behind. We have company, Lyra announced, all traces of vulnerability gone from her voice. 3 pursuit craft, heavily armed, on an intercept course. Pirates? Dex asked, jumping back into the pilot's seat. Negative. These are military-grade vessels with stealth capabilities. They are hailing us. Before Dex could respond, a harsh voice filled the cabin. Attention vessel Lyra. This is Commander Vex of the Azareth Special Forces. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Surrender the AI core immediately or be destroyed. Dex shot a bewildered look at the console. Azareth? The Imperial Dynasty? What the hell do they want with you? I don't know, Lyra replied. But there was a tremor in her voice that suggested otherwise. But Dex, we cannot let them take me, please. The desperation in her plea was palpable. Dex had no idea what was happening. But one thing was clear. These weren't debt collectors or common bounty hunters. This was something much bigger. What are our options? He asked, scanning the controls. We cannot outrun them, Lyra admitted. But I know this sector. There is an abandoned mining colony in the Calderon Belt with magnetic interference that could mask our signature. If we can reach it. Do it, Dex decided, tightening his harness. Full power to engines. Be advised, Lyra warned. This vessel was not designed for high-speed maneuvers. Structural integrity may be compromised. Dex grinned, despite the danger. Then it's a good thing I didn't pay for it. Let's see what this rusty girl can do. The engines roared to life with surprising power, pushing Dex back into his seat as Lyra accelerated toward the distant asteroid belt. Behind them, the pursuing vessels fired warning shots, energy bolts streaking past the viewports. "They're serious," Dex muttered. "What exactly did you do to piss off an Imperial military unit?" "I wish I could tell you," Lyra replied. Her voice strained as she diverted power between systems. "But the memories are fragmented. I only know that I must not fall into their hands. Not again." "There's that again word," Dex noted, gripping the manual controls as they weaved through the first outlying asteroids. "You're going to have to give me more than that if we're going to risk our lives running from the most powerful empire in the galaxy." The ship shuddered as a bolt grazed their rear deflector. Lyra's voice became softer, almost intimate, despite the chaos around them. "I was not always Lyra, the ship's AI," she said. "I was someone else, someone they feared, someone they tried to erase." Dex's eyes widened as the implications sank in. "You're saying you were human?" Before Lyra could answer, a direct hit rocked the ship, sending sparks flying from a nearby panel. Dex was thrown against his harness, pain lancing through his shoulder. "Port thruster damaged," Lyra reported. "Rerouting power. Entering the Calderon belt in 30 seconds. Through the viewport, Dex could see the dense field of asteroids looming before them, a chaotic maze of spinning rocks and space debris. It was suicidal to enter at their current speed, but the alternative was capture or destruction. "If we survive this," Dex said through gritted teeth, "you're going to tell me everything." "If we survive," Lyra agreed, "I will try to remember everything there is to tell." With that promise hanging between them, the damaged ship plunged into the asteroid field, pursued by the relentless forces of an empire that would stop at nothing to reclaim its lost property, or destroy it trying. The Calderon belt was a graveyard of broken dreams and failed mining ventures, a treacherous labyrinth of spinning rocks, abandoned equipment, and the occasional derelict ship. It was also, at this moment, Dex and Lyra's only hope for survival. "Hard to port!" Dex shouted, as a massive asteroid loomed directly ahead. The ship responded instantly, banking with a grace that belied its battered exterior. "Our pursuers are maintaining distance," Lyra reported. "Their larger vessels are less maneuverable in these conditions." Dex allowed himself a small smile. "Finally, some good news. How far to this colony you mentioned?" "Approximately 7 minutes at current speed. However, the magnetic interference is already affecting my navigation systems. I will need to rely on your visual guidance." "Great," Dex muttered. "Manual flying through an asteroid field. Always wanted that on my resume." Despite his complaints, Dex's hands moved confidently over the controls. For all his failings in life, and there were many, he had always been an exceptional pilot. It was everything else: impulse control, financial management, choosing trustworthy associates, where he tended to crash and burn. They weaved through the field, debris occasionally scraping against the hull with nerve-wracking screeches. Behind them, one of the pursuit craft clipped an asteroid and spun out of control, disappearing in a bloom of silent fire. "2 remaining," Lyra updated. "They are calling for reinforcements. How long until they arrive?" "Unknown, but we should assume they are already en route." Dex nodded grimly. "Then, we'd better make the most of our head start." As they penetrated deeper into the belt, the magnetic interference grew stronger. The ship's instruments flickered, and even Lyra's voice occasionally distorted. "I'm experiencing difficulties," she admitted, her normally smooth tones breaking up. "The electromagnetic fields are affecting my processes." Concern flashed across Dex's face. "Are you going to be okay?" "I will. Adapt," Lyra assured him, though she sounded less certain than usual. But I may experience memory fluctuations. It is triggering fragments I cannot properly integrate. As if to illustrate her point, the cabin lights suddenly shifted to a deep purple, and when Lyra spoke again, her voice had changed, higher, with an accent Dex couldn't place. The gardens at the summer palace were always most beautiful at dusk, she said dreamily. The twin moons would rise over the eastern towers, casting silver light on the water lilies. Dex frowned. Lyra, what are you talking about? The lights flickered, then returned to normal. I apologize, Lyra said, her usual voice restored. That was unexpected. A memory fragment. A memory of gardens and palaces? Dex asked skeptically. That doesn't sound like something a ship's AI would experience. No, Lyra agreed quietly. It doesn't. Before Dex could press further, she announced, Colony in visual range, preparing for approach. Through the viewport, Dex could see a cluster of structures clinging to the surface of a large, oblong asteroid. The colony was dark, save for a few emergency lights that had somehow remained operational over the years of abandonment. There, Lyra directed. Docking Bay 3 still has atmospheric containment. We can shelter there while I attempt repairs. Dex guided the ship toward the indicated bay, maneuvering carefully through the debris field that surrounded the colony. As they approached, massive doors, once automated, but now frozen half open, loomed before them. That's a tight fit, Dex observed, eyeing the narrow gap. You can make it, Lyra said with unexpected confidence. I've seen your flight records. Despite your numerous crashes, your spatial awareness scores were always exceptional. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Dex replied dryly. Though I'm not sure how I feel about you digging through my past. Would you prefer I navigate blindly? Point taken. With careful precision, Dex edged the ship through the gap in the doors, scraping paint but avoiding any serious damage. The docking bay beyond was cavernous and dark, filled with the skeletal remains of mining equipment and smaller vessels. Atmospheric readings indicate breathable air, though thin, Lyra reported as they settled onto the landing pad. Power systems are minimal but functional. This facility appears to have been abandoned in haste. Dex powered down the engines, but kept the ship's systems on standby. How long before our friends figure out where we've gone? The magnetic interference should mask our signature for several hours at least, but they will search methodically. We have perhaps a day before they locate us. Then we'd better use that time wisely. Dex unbuckled his harness and stood. First, let's assess the damage and see what repairs we can make. Then, you and I are going to have a long talk about exactly who or what you are, and why the Azareth Empire is so determined to get their hands on you. That may be a longer conversation than you anticipate, Lyra said hesitantly. Well, Dex replied, grabbing a toolkit from a storage compartment. It looks like we've got time to kill. As he prepared to exit the ship and examine the external damage, Lyra spoke again, her voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. Dex, thank you for not abandoning me. He paused at the airlock, a complex mix of emotions crossing his weathered face. Don't thank me yet. I'm still not convinced this isn't the worst decision I've ever made, and I've made some doozies. Nevertheless, Lyra insisted softly, you chose to help me when most would not. That means something. Dex didn't respond, but as he stepped out into the abandoned docking bay, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just crossed a threshold from which there was no return. Whatever secrets Lyra was hiding, they were worth killing for, and possibly worth dying for. And for reasons he couldn't quite articulate, even to himself, he was determined to uncover them all. The external damage to the ship was worse than Dex had initially feared. The port thruster was hanging by a handful of connectors, and several hull plates had been partially melted by the energy weapons. It was a miracle they'd made it this far. "Well," he announced, climbing back into the cockpit after his inspection. "The good news is, we're not dead yet. The bad news is just about everything else." "How severe is the damage?" Lyra inquired, her voice emanating from a small portable communicator Dex had clipped to his belt. "Nothing I can't fix with a fully equipped maintenance bay, a team of certified mechanics, and about 50,000 credits worth of parts," he sighed, running a hand through his sweat-damp hair. "Unfortunately, we have none of those things." "This colony was once a major mining operation," Lyra pointed out. "There may be supplies or equipment we can salvage." Dex nodded, already thinking along the same lines. "Worth a look. But first..." He settled back into the pilot's chair, fixing his gaze on the main console, where Lyra's voice typically projected from. "You owe me some answers." The cabin lights dimmed slightly, as if Lyra were preparing herself for a difficult confession. "Yes," she agreed. "I do. But I must warn you. What I am about to tell you will put you in even greater danger than you already are. Once you know the truth, there is no unknowing it." "I'm already being hunted by Imperial forces," Dex countered. "How much worse could it get?" "Significantly," Lyra replied with grim certainty. "The forces pursuing us are merely the vanguard. If they fail, others will come, more powerful, more relentless." Dex leaned forward, his expression hardening. "Why? What could possibly make a rusty cargo ship and a quirky AI worth this kind of trouble?" "Because," Lyra said, her voice dropping to an almost whisper, "I am not merely an artificial intelligence. I am Princess Seralia of House Azareth, heir to the Imperial throne and rightful ruler of the Seven Systems." Dex stared at the console in stunned silence, then burst into incredulous laughter. "Right, and I'm the lost prince of Andromeda." His laughter died when Lyra remained silent. "You're serious, aren't you?" "Entirely," Lyra, or Seralia, confirmed. "My consciousness was forcibly extracted and imprisoned within this ship's systems 5 years ago, as punishment for opposing my father's war of expansion against the Free Worlds Alliance." Dex's mind reeled, trying to process this revelation. That's impossible. Human consciousness transfer is theoretical at best, illegal in most systems, and certainly beyond the capabilities of even Imperial technology." "It was not Imperial technology," Lyra corrected. "My father employed forbidden methods from the ancient domains. Technology so dangerous its mere possession is punishable by death throughout civilized space." She paused, allowing Dex to absorb this information before continuing. "I was to be made an example of, a daughter who defied her father and emperor, stripped of her physical form and condemned to eternal isolation as a ship's navigation system. A living ghost, forever aware but unable to affect the world around me." The implications were staggering, if what Lyra claimed was true. Dex wasn't just harboring a stolen AI, he was harboring the kidnapped consciousness of an Imperial princess. The penalty for such a crime would be far worse than a simple execution. "Let's say I believe you," he said carefully. "Why would they hunt you now, after 5 years? And why were you in the possession of that corporate suit I won you from?" "Because my brother, Malik, now sits upon the throne," Lyra explained. "My father died 6 months ago, assassinated, I suspect, though the official reports claim natural causes. Malik has always been ambitious and cruel. He knows that I possess information that could destroy him, evidence of atrocities committed during the expansion that would turn even his most loyal supporters against him." "And the corporate guy?" "A broker, most likely. Someone who acquired me without knowing my true nature, intending to sell me to the highest bidder. The Empire has put out discreet inquiries for this vessel for years, offering substantial rewards for its return. Dex's mind flashed back to the poker game, to Riker's too casual offer to bet the ship. He knew, Dex realized. That's why he seemed so angry when he lost. He'd already arranged the sale. Most probable, Lyra agreed. And now, instead of claiming his reward, he must explain to very dangerous people why the prize they seek is in the hands of a, forgive me, washed-up pilot with a gambling problem. Hey, Dex protested half-heartedly, but he couldn't deny the accuracy of the description. So, what's the plan now? We can't hide in this abandoned colony forever. No, Lyra conceded, but we can use the time we have to effect essential repairs and consider our options. I have contacts, people who worked with me in the resistance against my father's regime. If we can reach them. Whoa, Dex interrupted, holding up his hands. Let's back up. We don't have any options. I'm not getting involved in imperial politics or resistance movements. Once this ship is flyable, I'm taking you to the nearest neutral port and parting ways. The temperature in the cabin seemed to drop several degrees. You would abandon me to my fate? Lyra asked, her voice unnervingly calm. Hand me over to those who would erase what remains of my consciousness and use the information in my memory banks to continue their campaign of oppression? Dex shifted uncomfortably. I didn't say I'd hand you over, just that I can't be part of whatever crusade you're on. I'm not a hero, princess. I'm just a guy trying to stay alive. Everyone is just trying to stay alive. Dex Mallory, Lyra replied softly. The difference is in what they're willing to live with. Can you live with yourself, knowing you had the chance to make a difference but chose not to? Before Dex could formulate a response, an alert sounded from the console. Movement detected at the colony entrance, Lyra reported, her tone shifting from philosophical to urgent. They've found us sooner than anticipated, Dex swore under his breath, moving to the viewport. In the distance, he could see the faint glow of thrusters as ships approached the abandoned facility. How? He demanded. You said we had at least a day. They must have deployed tracking drones throughout the belt, Lyra surmised. A resource-intensive strategy, but effective. Dex's mind raced through their limited options. The ship wasn't spaceworthy in its current condition, and even if it were, they'd be caught in seconds trying to leave the colony. Is there another way out of here? He asked, already gathering essential supplies into a small pack. Service tunnels, emergency exits? Yes, Lyra confirmed. This colony was constructed with multiple evacuation routes. There should be maintenance tunnels leading to secondary docking areas on the far side of the asteroid. Can you download yourself to something portable? Dex asked, eyeing the main console. I'm not leaving you behind, but I can't exactly carry the whole ship. There was a pause that lasted just a fraction too long. There is a mobile unit, Lyra finally admitted. A data core in the engineering section that contains my primary consciousness. The ship's systems are merely extensions. Why didn't you mention this before? Because it makes me vulnerable, Lyra said simply. In that form, I am entirely dependent on external power and protection. It is frightening. Dex understood fear all too well. It had been his constant companion for years. Fear of creditors, fear of failure, fear of the emptiness that waited when the adrenaline of the next scheme or score faded. I won't let anything happen to you, he promised, surprising himself with his sincerity. Now, where exactly is this core? Under Lyra's guidance, Dex made his way to the engineering section, where a panel slid aside to reveal a sleek, cylindrical object about the size of his forearm. It glowed with a soft blue light, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. "That's you?" he asked, reaching for it hesitantly. "That is my central processing unit, yes," Lyra confirmed. "Once you disconnect it, this ship will become nothing more than metal and circuits. I will exist only within that core." The implications weren't lost on Dex. Lyra was placing her existence, her very self, literally in his hands. The trust inherent in that act was staggering. "I'll be careful," he promised, as he gently disconnected the core from its housing. The ship's lights flickered, then dimmed to emergency levels. The constant hum of systems that had become background noise fell silent. A moment later, the core in his hands pulsed brighter, and Lyra's voice emanated from it. "Connection established. This is disorienting. My sensory inputs are severely limited in this form. Can you still guide us through the tunnels?" "Yes. I have the colony schematics in my memory. But we must hurry. They will breach the main doors soon." Dex secured the core in his pack, ensuring it was cushioned and protected, then retrieved a blaster from a hidden compartment near the pilot's seat. It wasn't much, an old model with limited charge, but it was better than nothing. "Ready?" he asked, adjusting the pack carefully. "As ready as one can be when reduced to a portable data storage device," Lyra replied, a hint of her characteristic dry humor, returning despite their dire circumstances. With one last look at the ship that had briefly been his, Dex headed for the maintenance access hatch Lyra had indicated. Behind them, the distant sound of the main colony doors being forced open echoed through the cavernous docking bay. The hunt was on, and this time, there would be no easy escape through an asteroid field. This would be a game of cat and mouse through the dark, abandoned corridors of a dead colony, with Dex and his royal passenger as the mice. Yet, as he sealed the access hatch behind them and plunged into the dimly lit maintenance tunnels, Dex couldn't help but feel a strange sense of purpose that had been absent from his life for as long as he could remember. For the first time in years, he was doing something that mattered, something beyond mere survival. Whether that something would get him killed remained to be seen. The maintenance tunnels were a claustrophobic maze of corroded metal, exposed wiring, and the occasional skittering sound that Dex preferred not to investigate too closely. Emergency lighting still functioned in some sections, casting an eerie red glow that barely illuminated the path ahead. In others, complete darkness forced him to rely on the soft blue luminescence of Lyra's core and his own sense of touch. "Left at the next junction," Lyra directed, her voice now emanating from the pack where her core rested. "Then 3 levels down. There should be a maintenance ladder." Dex followed her instructions, moving as quickly as he dared in the uncertain footing. Behind them, distant sounds of their pursuers echoed through the tunnels, orders being shouted, the clank of armored boots, and occasionally the whine of scanning equipment. "They're being thorough," Dex observed grimly as he located the ladder and began his descent. "Your brother really wants you back." "Malik doesn't want me back," Lyra corrected. "He wants me destroyed. The knowledge I possess would unravel everything he has built since our father's death." Dex paused on the ladder, curiosity momentarily overriding his fear. "What exactly do you know that's so damaging?" The core pulsed more intensely, the blue light flickering with what Dex was beginning to recognize as emotional distress. "I witnessed the Hadrian massacre," Lyra replied softly. "Not from reports or second-hand accounts. I was there. I saw my brother give the order to deploy banned bioweapons against civilian populations. Over 300,000 people died in agony while he watched from orbit." Dex nearly lost his grip on the ladder. The Hadrian massacre was infamous throughout the galaxy, a tragedy attributed to rogue military commanders who had allegedly been executed for their crimes. If what Lyra claimed was true. "You have proof?" he asked, resuming his descent. I recorded everything, Lyra confirmed. The orders, the deployment, the aftermath. The data is encrypted within my memory banks, protected by biometric locks that only I can release. That's why Malik can't simply have me copied or my memory extracted. The encryption would trigger a data purge. And that's why he needs you intact, Dex realized. To either force you to keep silent or to find a way around your encryption. Precisely. Though intact is a relative term when one exists as digital consciousness. They reached the bottom of the ladder, emerging into a wider tunnel that appeared to be a service route for cargo transport. Abandoned hover trolleys and containers lined the walls, covered in years of dust. We're on the correct level, Lyra confirmed. The secondary docking bay should be approximately half a kilometer in that direction. She couldn't point, of course, but a pulse of brighter light from the core indicated the way forward. Dex moved cautiously, blaster at the ready. And then what? Even if there's a functional ship there, we're still trapped in an asteroid field with Imperial forces blocking the exits. There is an old mining vessel in Bay 12 that may still be operational, Lyra explained. Mining ships are built to navigate asteroid fields. If we can reach it— She fell silent abruptly. Dex froze, listening intently. From somewhere ahead came the unmistakable sound of armored footsteps and the low murmur of voices. "They've cut us off," he whispered, ducking behind a stack of containers. "They're using the colony schematics to predict our route," Lyra realized. "We need an alternative path." Dex scanned their surroundings desperately. The main tunnel was blocked, and going back would only lead them into the arms of the search parties behind them. His eyes fell on a narrow access panel near the floor, partially hidden behind one of the hover trolleys. "What about that? Where does it lead?" Lyra's core pulsed as she accessed her stored data on the colony layout. "That appears to be a waste management conduit. It would bypass the main tunnel and eventually connect to the environmental control section, adjacent to the secondary docking bays." "Perfect," Dex said, already moving toward it. "However," Lyra added with noticeable reluctance, "such conduits were typically used for organic waste disposal, after years of abandonment." Dex grimaced. "Understood. It's going to stink." He pried open the panel, revealing a narrow passage barely wide enough for him to crawl through. As predicted, a foul odor wafted out. "Fantastic." "I apologize for the indignity," Lyra said, sounding genuinely contrite. "Trust me, Princess," Dex replied, as he carefully secured his pack to ensure Lyra's core wouldn't be damaged. "I've been in worse places, at least metaphorically." He squeezed into the conduit, trying to breathe through his mouth as he crawled forward. The passage was dark and slimy, the walls coated with substances he preferred not to identify. Behind him, he could hear voices growing closer to their previous position. "We need to move faster," Lyra urged. "They're deploying life sign scanners." Dex increased his pace, ignoring the squelching sounds beneath his hands and knees. "Can they detect you? Your core?" "I mean—" "Not specifically," Lyra assured him. "To their scanners, I would register as active technology, indistinguishable from any other powered device. As long as we remain beyond the range of their more sophisticated equipment, we should—" A sudden tremor shook the entire conduit, nearly causing Dex to lose his balance. Dust and debris rained down from above. "What was that?" he hissed. "They appear to be using controlled detonations to collapse certain sections of the colony," Lyra reported, her voice unnervingly calm given the implications. "They're systematically eliminating escape routes." Dex swore under his breath, crawling faster despite the treacherous footing. "They'd destroy an entire mining colony just to catch us?" "To catch me," Lyra corrected. "The colony is abandoned, and the Empire can easily claim it was unstable due to neglect. No one would question its collapse. Another explosion, closer this time, sent a shockwave through the conduit. Ahead, Dex could see light, the end of the passage. Almost there, he encouraged, more for himself than for Lyra. With a final push, he emerged into a larger chamber, filled with massive filtration equipment and environmental regulators. Most were inactive, but a few status lights still blinked on the central control panels. Dex took a moment to catch his breath, wiping the worst of the slime from his clothes. "Okay, where now?" Lyra's core brightened as she oriented herself. The docking bay should be through that doorway and across the main processing floor. But Dex... What? "I'm detecting multiple life signs in that area. They've already secured the bay." Dex's shoulders slumped. They were so close, yet still trapped. "Options? Limited," Lyra admitted. "But there may be one possibility. This environmental control center regulates atmosphere for the entire facility. If we were to trigger an emergency purge..." "We'd what? Suck all the air out?" Dex asked incredulously. "I might have missed some biology classes, but I'm pretty sure I need oxygen." "Not all sections," Lyra clarified. "Just the docking bay. There should be emergency protocols that would seal off critical areas, including this one, in the event of a catastrophic breach. Once the bay is depressurized, they'd either be killed or forced to retreat to sealed areas." Dex finished, catching on. "And we could use their own survival suits to cross to the ship." Precisely. It was ruthless, potentially deadly for their pursuers, but Dex was running out of alternatives. "Can you hack into the environmental systems?" "If you can connect my core to the main console, yes." "But Dex..." Lyra hesitated. "This would mean intentionally endangering lives. I am not comfortable with that." The admission caught Dex by surprise. Here was an AI, or a digital consciousness, or whatever Lyra truly was, expressing moral qualms about actions that would ensure her own survival. "What if we triggered alarms first?" he suggested. "Give them warning to get to safety? They might still be trapped, but they'd be alive." The core pulsed with what seemed like relief. "Yes, that would be preferable. I have no desire to replicate the crimes I seek to expose." Dex moved to the main environmental console, brushing away years of dust to reveal the interface. Following Lyra's instructions, he located an access port where her core could be temporarily connected. "This will only take a moment," Lyra assured him, as he carefully linked her to the system. The ancient computers hummed to life, displays flickering as Lyra navigated through layers of security protocols and emergency systems. Accessing environmental controls, initiating emergency warning sequence. Throughout the colony, klaxons suddenly blared to life, and automated announcements began broadcasting in multiple languages. "Warning, atmospheric breach, imminent in docking bay 12. All personnel evacuate immediately. Emergency seals will engage in 2 minutes." Through the doorway, Dex could hear shouts of confusion, followed by the sounds of hurried movement. "They're responding to the alert," he observed, "taking up defensive positions outside the safety zones." "As expected," Lyra replied. "Imperial protocol prioritizes mission objectives over individual safety. They will attempt to maintain control of critical areas while minimum personnel retreat to secure zones." Dex checked his blaster's charge, still nearly full. "So we'll still have to fight our way through." "Most likely, but against fewer opponents, and with the advantage of surprise. Atmospheric purge commencing in 60 seconds. Dex positioned himself near the doorway, ready to move as soon as the opportunity presented itself. "I don't suppose you have any combat programming in that digital brain of yours?" "I received standard self-defense training as required for all members of the royal family," Lyra replied. "However, My current form somewhat limits my ability to apply those skills. Despite everything, Dex found himself smiling. Was that a joke, Princess? An observation of fact with humorous undertones, Lyra corrected primly. Purge commencing in 10 seconds. Prepare yourself. Dex tightened his grip on the blaster and took a deep breath. In the distance, the warning klaxons reached a crescendo. And then, silence. A moment later, a massive whooshing sound echoed through the facility as the atmosphere in the docking bay was vented into space. Through the reinforced windows, Dex could see debris and unsecured equipment being pulled toward the now open bay doors. Several Imperial soldiers, caught unprepared despite the warnings, scrambled for handholds as the air rushed past them. Emergency seals engaged, Lyra announced. This section remains pressurized, but the path to Bay 12 is now exposed to vacuum. We will need environmental suits. Dex quickly disconnected Lyra's core from the console and returned it to his pack. There should be emergency equipment in a control center like this. Look for storage lockers. They found what they needed in a small antechamber. 2 old, but serviceable vacuum suits. Dex donned one quickly, his movements practiced from years of working on various vessels. Then, carefully placed Lyra's core in a shielded compartment of the suit, designed for sensitive equipment. Comfortable? He asked, as he sealed the compartment. As comfortable as one can be when reduced to a glowing cylinder, came Lyra's slightly muffled reply. The radiation shielding in this compartment is actually quite impressive for such an outdated model. Don't get too attached. These colony suits aren't designed for extended EVA. Dex checked the oxygen levels. 4 hours at normal consumption. More than enough for what they needed to do. Helmet secured. He approached the airlock that would lead them toward the docking bay. Through the small viewport, he could see the chaos their atmospheric purge had created. Papers and lightweight debris floating in zero gravity, emergency lights flashing, and Imperial soldiers in full vacuum gear establishing a perimeter around what must be the mining vessel Lyra had mentioned. I count 7 hostiles still in the bay, Dex reported. All in environmental suits. All armed. The ship's entry ramp appears to be down, Lyra observed through the suit's external sensors. If we can reach it. Big if, Dex muttered. They've got the angles covered. We'd be shot before we made it halfway across. Perhaps a distraction. Dex considered their limited options, then noticed a cluster of pressurized canisters near one of the maintenance stations. Explosive. Highly compressed nitrogen, Lyra confirmed after analyzing the hazard markings. Not explosive per se, but if ruptured violently. Good enough. Dex set his blaster to maximum power, a setting that would drain the charge quickly, but deliver devastating energy on impact. Ready? As I'll ever be, Lyra replied, her voice betraying a mix of fear and determination that sounded surprisingly human. Dex cycled the airlock, the last barrier of breathable air hissing away as the outer door slid open. In the vacuum of the depressurized bay, sound no longer traveled through air, creating an eerie silence broken only by the vibrations transmitted through his suit and the communications link with Lyra. He pushed off from the airlock, using the microgravity to his advantage as he propelled himself toward a stack of cargo containers that would provide cover. An Imperial soldier spotted him mid-flight, raising a weapon, but in 0G, the soldier's aim was compromised. The shot went wide. Dex landed behind the containers, the magnetic soles of his vacuum suit engaging to keep him anchored. He peered around the edge, aimed his blaster at the nitrogen canisters, and fired. The effect was spectacular. Without air to create a traditional explosion, the rupturing canisters instead released their pressurized contents in a violent burst that sent the heavy cylinders rocketing in opposite directions like missiles. One slammed into a group of soldiers, scattering them. The other punched through a maintenance gantry, causing it to collapse in a shower of debris. "Now!" Dex shouted unnecessarily. Lyra could feel his movement through the suit's sensors. He pushed off again, using the confusion to propel himself directly toward the mining vessel's extended ramp. Two soldiers recovered quickly, bringing their weapons to bear. But Dex was already firing, not to kill, but to force them to take cover. He landed on the ramp with a metallic thud, the impact jarring through his bones, and scrambled upward into the ship's airlock. "Close it!" he commanded, as soon as he was inside. To his surprise, the outer door immediately began to slide shut. Lyra had already interfaced with the ship's systems through his suit's communications array. "Pressurizing airlock," she reported, as the inner door remained sealed. "Ship systems are in standby mode but operational. However, we have a problem." "Just one?" Dex asked sarcastically, removing his helmet as breathable air filled the small chamber. "The ship is secured with biometric locks. We cannot access flight controls without authorized credentials." Dex swore colorfully, his momentary triumph evaporating. "Can you hack it?" "Given time, perhaps. But we don't have time. They're attempting to override the airlock controls from outside." Dex's mind raced. Biometric locks typically required fingerprints, retinal scans, or DNA samples, none of which they could fake quickly. Unless... "You said this was a mining vessel," he recalled suddenly. "Corporate or independent?" "Registry indicates it belonged to the Meridian Mining Consortium," Lyra replied. "Why?" A slow smile spread across Dex's face. "Because I used to work for Meridian, 5 years ago, before my gambling debts caught up with me. Employee ID 7726 Alpha. Searching ship records." There was a pause. Then Lyra's core pulsed brightly. "Confirmed. Employee data is still in the system archives. The ship hasn't been updated since it was abandoned." "Meaning my credentials should still work," Dex finished, already moving toward the inner door. "Let's find out if my former employers were too cheap to purge old security clearances." The inner door slid open, revealing the ship's main cabin, a utilitarian space designed for function rather than comfort. Dex moved quickly to the pilot's console, placing his hand on the biometric scanner. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then the console illuminated, and a mechanical voice announced, "Identity confirmed. Welcome. Mining Specialist Dexter Mallory. Please be advised that your employment status is listed as terminated, unfavorable. Limited access granted." Dex let out a whoop of triumph. "Limited access is all we need." He slid into the pilot's seat and began the launch sequence. Behind them, warning lights indicated that the external airlock was being breached. "They're cutting through," Lyra warned. "Let them," Dex replied confidently as the engines rumbled to life. "We'll be gone before they get past the outer door." The mining vessel, a bulky, inelegant craft designed to withstand the rigors of asteroid operations, lifted from the docking bay floor. Its thrusters, more powerful than its ungainly appearance suggested, pushed it forward toward the open bay doors and the star-filled void beyond. "Imperial vessels are moving to intercept," Lyra reported, now connected to the ship's sensor array. 3 craft, approaching from Sector 4. "They'll be expecting us to run," Dex said, hands dancing over the controls with practiced ease. "So let's not..." Instead of accelerating away from the colony, he swung the mining vessel in a tight arc, bringing it around to the colony's far side. The ship groaned under the strain of the maneuver, but its reinforced frame held. "What are you doing?" Lyra asked, surprise evident in her voice. "Mining ships have specialized equipment," Dex explained, activating systems that hadn't been used in years, including high-powered drills and short-range mineral extractors. Understanding dawned in Lyra's tone. "You're going to use mining equipment as weapons?" "Not exactly. Dex targeted a specific section of the asteroid's surface and fired the mineral extractors, powerful energy beams designed to break down rock for easy collection. "I'm creating a distraction." The beams struck the asteroid, superheating the surface. Cracks began to spread from the impact point, glowing red-hot in the vacuum. "The colony's structural integrity is already compromised from their explosives," Dex continued, firing a second blast at a different location. A few more stresses in the right places. As if on cue, a massive fissure opened along the asteroid's surface. The colony structure groaned, visible even from their position, as sections began to tear away from each other. "The Imperial vessels are diverting to assist their ground teams," Lyra reported, a note of awe in her voice. "They're attempting emergency extractions, which gives us our window." Dex fired the engines to full power, plotting a course directly away from the disintegrating colony and into the densest part of the asteroid field. "They'll be busy for at least 10 minutes. By then, we'll be lost in the rocks." The mining vessel surged forward, its specialized navigation systems automatically plotting the safest path through the treacherous field. Behind them, the abandoned colony continued to break apart, not completely destroyed, but damaged enough to force the Imperial forces to prioritize rescue over pursuit. "That was impressive," Lyra admitted, as the danger receded behind them. "And surprisingly non-lethal." "I'm full of surprises," Dex replied with a grin, allowing himself to relax slightly for the first time in hours. "Besides, like you said, no point in becoming the monsters we're running from." As the mining vessel wound its way deeper into the Calderon belt, a curious silence fell between them. The immediate danger had passed, but the larger threat remained. They were fugitives now, hunted by the most powerful empire in the galaxy, with few allies and fewer resources. Yet somehow, against all logic, Dex felt more alive than he had in years. There was purpose in this mad flight, meaning beyond the next score or the next game of chance. "So," he said finally, leaning back in the pilot's chair, "about those contacts you mentioned, the resistance fighters. Where do we find them?" Lyra's core pulsed with what might have been surprise. "You've decided to help me then, despite the dangers?" Dex shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant despite the weight of the decision. "Let's just say you've convinced me that there are some things worth taking a stand for. Besides, I'm already in too deep to back out now." "Thank you," Lyra said softly, her digital voice somehow conveying genuine emotion. "I promise you won't regret this." "I already regret it," Dex countered with a wry smile. "But that doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do." As the mining vessel continued its journey through the asteroid field, neither of them could have predicted how their unlikely partnership would evolve, or the extraordinary chain of events they had set in motion that would eventually shake the foundations of an empire. For now, they were simply two fugitives in a stolen ship, bound together by circumstance and a growing sense of trust that neither had expected to find in the cold emptiness of space. The Meridian mining vessel wasn't designed for comfort or speed, but it had one critical advantage. It was virtually invisible to standard Imperial scanners. Mining ships, with their irregular energy signatures and reinforced hulls laden with mineral deposits, tended to appear as little more than debris or small asteroids on most detection systems. This anonymity allowed Dex and Lyra to navigate away from the Calderon belt without immediate pursuit. By the time the Imperial forces had rescued their stranded personnel and regrouped, the fugitives were already halfway to their destination, a small, unregistered outpost on the fringes of the Corellian Drift. "Approaching Waypoint Station," Dex announced, 3 days after their escape. The journey had been tense but uneventful. Time spent making minor repairs to the aging vessel and sharing stories that gradually filled in the gaps of their respective pasts. Through their conversations, Dex had learned more about Lyra's former life as Princess Seralia, her privileged upbringing in the imperial palace, her growing disillusionment with her father's policies, and eventually, her clandestine work with resistance groups that had led to her cruel punishment. In turn, Lyra had discovered the complexities beneath Dex's cavalier exterior. His childhood as a refugee, after his mother fled with him during a period of political unrest. His struggle to build a life without connections or resources. And the series of setbacks and poor choices that had led to his desperate situation on Velon 9. Waypoint doesn't appear on any official charts, Lyra observed, as a small, irregular structure came into view. What appeared to be a collection of salvaged ship parts and habitation modules cobbled together around a central asteroid. How do you know of it? When you live on the edges of society long enough, you learn where to find places that don't ask questions, Dex replied, initiating docking procedures. I've used Waypoint a few times when I needed to disappear for a while. It's run by a collective of deserters, smugglers, and political refugees. People with good reasons to stay off Imperial radar. And you trust them? Dex laughed. Trust might be too strong a word, but they have a strict code. Everyone minds their own business, and anyone who brings trouble to the station gets spaced without a trial. Self-preservation is a powerful motivator for discretion. As they docked at one of the station's many irregular ports, Dex carefully removed Lyra's core from its secure compartment and placed it in a specially modified container he'd fashioned from mining equipment parts. It would allow her to remain connected to external sensors while keeping her true nature concealed. Can you still perceive your surroundings like this? He asked, as he sealed the container. Yes, though in a limited capacity, Lyra confirmed. The sensor array you've integrated is quite ingenious, if somewhat crude. Story of my life, Dex quipped. Ingenious but crude. He secured the container inside a standard equipment pack, which he slung over his shoulder. Ready to meet some of the galaxy's most interesting outcasts? Define interesting, Lyra replied dryly. Waypoint Station lived up to its reputation. The interior was a maze of repurposed corridors, makeshift markets, and cramped living quarters. People of various species moved through the crowded spaces, most keeping their heads down and their business private. The air smelled of recycled oxygen, exotic foods, and the unmistakable metallic tang of spacecraft lubricant. Dex navigated the labyrinth with practiced ease, occasionally nodding to acquaintances but avoiding extended conversation. Finally, they reached a small, unmarked door in a less trafficked section of the station. Who are we meeting? Lyra asked through the private communication link they had established. Someone who might be able to help us contact your resistance friends, Dex explained, knocking on the door in a specific pattern. She's called the Archivist, former Imperial intelligence analyst who defected about 8 years ago. If anyone can safely get a message to your people, it's her. The door slid open to reveal a dimly lit room filled with data terminals, holographic displays, and physical documents, a rarity in the digital age. A woman sat amid the information sea, her dark hair streaked with silver, her eyes sharp behind antique glasses, another anachronism that served as both fashion statement and subtle rebellion against imperial facial recognition technology. Mallory, she greeted without warmth. I heard you were dead. Rumors of my demise have been greatly exaggerated, Dex replied with a grin. Good to see you too, Vera. The archivist, Vera, eyed him skeptically, then noticed the pack he carried so carefully. You're not smuggling biologicals onto my station, are you? Because the last time... Nothing like that, Dex assured her quickly. But I do need your help, privately. Vera studied him for a moment longer, then sighed, and gestured them inside. Once the door was sealed, Dex carefully placed the container on a clear space among the data terminals. What I'm about to show you doesn't leave this room, he said seriously. And if you decide not to help us, we walk away. No hard feelings. But no reporting us either. Intriguing, Vera commented, folding her arms. Proceed. Dex opened the container, revealing Lyra's softly glowing core. This is Lyra. She's not your typical AI. Greetings, Archivist, Lyra said, her voice emanating from the core. I understand your caution, but I assure you, our presence here puts you at no immediate risk. Vera's eyes widened, her professional detachment momentarily shattered. That voice, she whispered. I know that voice. You do? Dex asked, surprised. The archivist moved closer, studying the core with newfound intensity. Princess Saralia, she said quietly. The lost heir. They said you were dead, executed for treason. A convenient fiction, Lyra confirmed. The truth, as you can see, is somewhat more complex. Vera turned to Dex, her expression hardening. Do you have any idea what you're involved in? The entire Imperial fleet will be hunting for this core. Yeah, we've had a taste of that already, Dex replied grimly. Which is why we need your help. Lyra says there are resistance contacts, people who worked with her before she was digitized. We need to reach them. The archivist paced the small room, clearly weighing her options. The resistance network has gone deeper underground since the new emperor took power. Malik's purges have been thorough. All the more reason to contact them, Lyra urged. I possess information that could end his reign, evidence of war crimes that even his most loyal supporters couldn't ignore. And what would that accomplish? Vera challenged. One tyrant falls, another rises. The system remains. Perhaps, Lyra acknowledged. But the people deserve to know the truth, and those who died deserve justice. The room fell silent as Vera continued her pacing. Finally, she stopped and faced them. There's someone who might help, a former royal guard named Ryan. After the princess disappeared, he went rogue, refused to accept the official story. Last I heard, he was operating a security firm on Talos Prime, but that was over a year ago. Ryan, Lyra repeated, her core pulsing brighter. Yes, I remember him. He was more than a guard. He was a friend. Can you get us to Talos Prime without alerting Imperial forces? Dex asked. Vera nodded reluctantly. I can provide falsified transit papers and a secure comm frequency. But after that, you're on your own. I've survived this long by not taking sides. That's all we ask, Dex assured her. As Vera began gathering the necessary documents and equipment, Dex leaned closer to Lyra's core. You didn't mention this Ryan before, he said quietly. There are many things I haven't mentioned, Lyra replied, equally soft. Some because I cannot fully access those memories. Others because... Because what? Because trust is earned incrementally, Dex Mallory. Just as you have been cautious with me, I have been cautious with you. Dex couldn't argue with that logic. Their alliance was still new, forged in danger and necessity rather than choice. Yet he couldn't deny a small sting of disappointment that Lyra had kept secrets from him. Here, Vera interrupted, handing Dex a data chip. Transit authorization for a merchant vessel from the outer colonies. The ship itself is in Docking Bay 42, an old transport I've been refurbishing. It's not much, but it's registered clean and has decent range. We can't take your ship, Dex protested. The archivist shrugged. Consider it an investment in potential regime change. Besides, that mining vessel you arrived in screams stolen property. You wouldn't make it past the first patrol. She was right, of course. The mining vessel had served its purpose, but continuing to use it would only draw unwanted attention. Thank you, Lyra said with evident sincerity. Your assistance will not be forgotten when matters are resolved. Vera's expression softened slightly. I'm not doing this for promises of future reward, Your Highness. I'm doing it because there are too few people willing to stand against the darkness. She turned to Dex, her gaze sharpening again. Take care of her. What she represents is more important than either of you realize. Dex nodded solemnly, securing Lyra's core back in its protective container. We'll be gone within the hour. As they prepared to leave, Vera placed a hand on Dex's arm. One more thing. There have been rumors, strange ones, about experiments the Emperor is conducting. Something to do with consciousness transfer and artificial intelligence. If what happened to the princess is related, then we're dealing with something even more dangerous than we thought, Dex finished. Be careful, Vera warned. And if you succeed, if you actually find a way to expose Malik's crimes, make sure the cure isn't worse than the disease. With those cryptic words echoing in their minds, Dex and Lyra departed for Docking Bay 42, where the next chapter of their journey awaited. The ship Vera had provided was, as promised, nothing special. A mid-sized transport with minimal weapons and unremarkable performance specifications. But it was anonymous, its registry clean and ordinary enough to avoid immediate scrutiny. As they left Waypoint Station behind, Dex couldn't shake the feeling that they had crossed another threshold, one that would make turning back impossible. They were no longer simply running from danger. They were actively moving toward it, seeking allies, and planning what amounted to treason against the most powerful entity in known space. Are we doing the right thing? He asked aloud as the stars streaked past the viewport. Does it matter? Lyra responded, her voice thoughtful. Right or wrong, we are doing the only thing we can. Dex had no answer to that. For better or worse, their course was set. All that remained was to follow it wherever it might lead, even if that meant confronting an empire and the dark secrets it so desperately wanted to keep buried. Talos Prime was a world of stark contrasts. Gleaming corporate towers rising from squalid urban sprawl, cutting-edge technology existing alongside desperate poverty. It was precisely the kind of place where someone could disappear, provided they had the right connections or enough credits to buy anonymity. Dex and Lyra arrived without incident, their borrowed vessel blending seamlessly with the constant traffic of merchants, tourists, and corporate transports. The falsified documents Vera had provided passed inspection without raising suspicion, and soon they were navigating the crowded streets of Talos City, seeking any trace of the man called Ryan. The security firm should be in this district, Dex muttered, consulting the information Vera had given them. He carried Lyra's core in a specially designed shoulder bag that allowed her to observe their surroundings while remaining concealed. This place has changed significantly since I last visited, Lyra observed. The economic disparity appears to have worsened. Imperial prosperity at work, Dex replied cynically. The rich get richer. The poor get conscripted or incarcerated. They turned down a narrow street lined with security businesses, mercenary recruiters, and shops selling personal defense equipment. Most appeared legitimate on the surface, though Dex suspected many offered services that wouldn't appear on their official registrations. There, Lyra directed, her sensors detecting a modest storefront with a simple sign, Sentinel Security Solutions. Unlike its flashier neighbors, Sentinel projected an air of understated professionalism. No garish advertisements, no promises of unstoppable protection or military-grade expertise. Just a clean facade and a clear security camera monitoring the entrance. Subtle, Dex commented appreciatively. The kind of place that actually delivers what it promises. That would be consistent with Ryan's character, Lyra agreed. He always valued substance over appearance. As they approached the entrance, Dex felt a prickling sensation at the back of his neck, the unmistakable feeling of being watched. He casually glanced around, noting at least 3 inconspicuous observation points beyond the obvious camera. "We're being assessed," he murmured to Lyra. "As one would expect from a competent security professional," she replied calmly. "Proceed normally." The door slid open as they reached it, revealing a Spartan reception area, staffed by a severe-looking woman with close-cropped hair and the bearing of someone with military training. "Welcome to Sentinel," she greeted them with professional courtesy that stopped short of warmth. "How may we assist you?" Dex had prepared a cover story about needing personal protection for a trading expedition, but something in the woman's penetrating gaze made him hesitate. Lying to someone this observant seemed futile. "We're looking for Ryan," he said instead, keeping his voice low. "It's a personal matter, regarding a mutual friend." The receptionist's expression didn't change, but her posture shifted subtly. "We have no employee by that name." "Our information indicates otherwise," Dex pressed. "It's important that we speak with him. Tell him." He glanced down at the bag containing Lyra's core, uncertain how much to reveal. "Tell him Saralia sends her regards." Lyra supplied through the bag's concealed speaker, pitched low enough that only Dex and the receptionist could hear. The effect was immediate. The woman's eyes widened almost imperceptibly, and her hand moved to a concealed control panel beneath the desk. "Wait here," she instructed, all pretense of unfamiliarity gone. She disappeared through a door behind the reception desk, leaving Dex and Lyra alone in the silent lobby. "That went better than expected," Dex observed quietly. "Or worse," Lyra countered. "We don't yet know if we've found an ally or triggered a security protocol." They didn't have to wait long for an answer. The door reopened, and a tall, broad-shouldered man emerged. He was older than Dex had expected, perhaps in his late 50s, with close-cropped silver hair and a face marked by both age and experience. His right arm and left eye were clearly cybernetic replacements, the kind of high-end prosthetics reserved for elite military personnel. The man studied Dex with his mismatched eyes, one warm brown, one glowing faintly blue, before his gaze dropped to the bag. "If this is some kind of cruel joke," he said, his deep voice controlled, but edged with danger, "you won't leave this building alive." Dex swallowed hard, but held his ground. "No joke, no trick." He carefully opened the bag, revealing Lyra's softly glowing core. "She wanted to speak with you herself." "Hello, Ryan?" Lyra said, her voice carrying that distinctive quality that had so startled the archivist. "It's been a long time." The security expert went utterly still, his cybernetic eye whirring slightly as it adjusted focus. "That's not possible," he whispered. "They said you were executed." "The official story was a lie," Lyra replied, "as were so many things my father and brother claimed." Ryan's human eye glistened with moisture. He quickly blinked away. He turned to the receptionist. "Lock down the facility. Full security protocol." Then, to Dex and Lyra, "Follow me, quickly." He led them through a series of corridors into what appeared to be a command center, a fortified room with multiple displays, showing security feeds from throughout the building and beyond. Once the door sealed behind them, Ryan gestured for Dex to place Lyra's core on a central table. "Explain," he demanded, his voice a complex mixture of hope and suspicion. "How is this possible? What happened to you, Princess?" Lyra's core pulsed gently as she recounted the story of her confrontation with her father, the forbidden technology used to extract and imprison her consciousness, and the years spent as little more than a ship's navigation system until Dex had unwittingly won her in a game of chance. As she spoke, Ryan's expression shifted from disbelief to horror to a cold, controlled fury. When she finished, he remained silent for several long moments, processing the implications. "I never believed you were a traitor," he said finally. "I knew something was wrong when they refused to allow a public trial, or even to produce your body. But this—" he shook his head in disgust. "This is beyond even what I suspected." "The situation has grown worse since my brother took the throne," Lyra continued. "The information I possess, evidence of his direct involvement in the Hadrian massacre, could destabilize his rule, but only if we can distribute it widely enough that it cannot be suppressed." Ryan nodded thoughtfully. "The resistance network has been decimated under Malik's purges, but not destroyed. We've gone deeper underground, become more cautious. It's made us less effective, but we've survived." He turned to Dex, assessing him with newfound interest. "And you? How does a—" He paused, searching for a diplomatic term. "A washed-up pilot with a gambling problem?" Dex supplied, with a self-deprecating smile. "I was going to say civilian freelancer, but yes. How does someone like you end up involved in high treason against the Empire?" Dex shrugged. "Wrong place, right time? Or maybe right place, wrong time. I'm still figuring that part out." "He saved me," Lyra interjected firmly. "When he could have sold me or abandoned me, he chose to help. Without him, I would still be trapped on that rusting cargo ship, or worse, back in my brother's possession." Ryan studied Dex with renewed interest. "Then you have my gratitude, Mallory, though you may come to regret your noble impulses before this is finished." "Already do, some days," Dex admitted. "But here we are." The security expert allowed himself a small smile before turning serious again. "The information you possess, you're certain it's definitive? Something that couldn't be dismissed as fabrication?" "I recorded everything," Lyra confirmed. "Direct orders from Malik to deploy the bioweapons, his dismissal of warnings about civilian casualties, even his comments afterward as he watched the effects spread across the settlement. The recordings include biometric markers that would confirm their authenticity." "That would explain the lengths they've gone to in hunting you," Ryan mused. "Such evidence would not only end Malik's reign but potentially shatter the Imperial system itself." He paced the room, considering their options. "We need to get you to the central broadcasting hub on Nexus Station. From there, we could transmit your data across all Imperial channels simultaneously. Not even the palace sensors could block every feed." "Nexus Station," Dex repeated incredulously. "The most heavily secured communications facility in Imperial space? Why not just walk straight into the palace and ask Malik to arrest us personally?" "Because Nexus is designed to be impenetrable from outside," Ryan explained, a calculating gleam in his eye. "But its internal security is less robust. The Empire never imagined someone would infiltrate the station itself to broadcast unauthorized content." "And how exactly do we infiltrate this supposedly impenetrable station?" Dex asked, skeptically. Ryan's expression hardened with resolve. "The same way I've inserted operatives into a dozen impenetrable Imperial facilities over the years. With careful planning, the right credentials, and a willingness to sacrifice everything for the mission." He fixed Dex with a penetrating stare. "The question is, are you prepared for what that entails?" Before Dex could respond, an alarm blared through the facility. One of the security monitors flashed red, showing armed figures approaching the building's perimeter. "Imperial security forces," Ryan identified immediately, moving to a control panel. "Special Tactics Unit. By the look of their equipment, someone traced you here." "That's impossible," Dex protested. "We were careful. The ship's clean. The documents perfect." "Perfection is what draws attention in an imperfect world," Ryan replied grimly, activating defense protocols. "Their scanners must have detected Lyra's core signature. They're learning, adapting to her unique energy patterns." "What do we do?" Dex asked, instinctively moving to shield Lyra's core. Ryan opened a concealed weapons locker, retrieving a pulse rifle for himself and a compact blaster, which he tossed to Dex. "We have an emergency exit route. My team will cover our withdrawal." He pressed a communication device. "Sentinel Protocol Omega. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Throughout the building, hidden panels slid open, revealing defensive positions and escape routes. Staff members who had appeared to be ordinary office workers transformed instantly into disciplined security operatives, taking up tactical positions with practiced efficiency. "You've been preparing for this," Lyra observed, as Dex carefully returned her to the protective bag. "For years," Ryan confirmed, leading them toward a concealed elevator at the back of the command center. "Ever since your execution, I've been building a network and resources for the day when the truth would emerge. I never imagined it would be quite like this. But we're ready." The elevator descended rapidly, bypassing the building's registered levels and continuing deep underground. When the doors opened, they revealed a small hangar containing a sleek, military-grade shuttle. "Imperial Interceptor," Dex identified with a professional's appreciation. "Heavily modified. How did you get your hands on one of these?" "I have friends in interesting places," Ryan replied cryptically, ushering them aboard. "And enemies who no longer have use for their military assets." As they settled into the shuttle, the sounds of combat reached them from above, energy weapons discharging, explosions, and the distinctive whine of Imperial stun cannons. "Your people," Dex began, concern evident in his voice, "knew the risks when they joined." Ryan cut him off, though a muscle in his jaw tightened. "They'll create maximum confusion, then disperse through prepared exit routes. We've drilled for this scenario dozens of times." The shuttle's engines hummed to life, silent compared to civilian models. A section of the hangar floor slid open, revealing a narrow tunnel sloping upward. "Maintenance access to the city's old subway system," Ryan explained, as he guided the shuttle into the dark passage. "It emerges 15 kilometers outside the city limits. By the time they realize we're gone, we'll be in orbit." The journey through the tunnel was tense and claustrophobic, the shuttle's exterior lights providing the only illumination in the ancient, concrete passage. After what seemed an eternity, they emerged into the open air of a ruined industrial zone, far from the city center. Ryan wasted no time, engaging the shuttle's thrusters to full power and climbing rapidly into the sky. Planetary defense systems would detect them soon, but the Interceptor's stealth capabilities would buy them precious minutes. "We need to make contact with the Resistance leadership," Ryan said, as they broke atmosphere. "I have a secure meeting point, a free trading outpost in the Vega sector. From there, we can plan our approach to Nexus Station. Assuming we make it past the Imperial blockade that's undoubtedly forming as we speak," Dex noted, watching the tactical display where multiple vessels were already moving to intercept. "Leave that to me," Ryan replied with grim confidence, activating a series of controls that Dex didn't recognize. The shuttle shuddered briefly, and then the energy signature displayed on the monitors changed completely. "Transponder modulation," Ryan explained before Dex could ask. "We now appear to be a diplomatic courier from the Orion Confederacy, a neutral power the Empire is currently courting as an ally. They won't risk an interstellar incident by firing on us without confirmation. And by the time they confirm we're not diplomats," Dex began. "We'll be long gone," Ryan finished, plotting a course to the nearest jump point. "The Resistance has survived this long by staying one step ahead. Today will be no different." As the stars blurred around them with the activation of the faster-than-light drive, Dex found himself studying their new ally. Ryan moved with the precision and confidence of a career soldier. But there was something more in his dedication to Lyra's cause, a personal investment that went beyond loyalty to a former employer. You were more than just her bodyguard, weren't you? Dex asked quietly, as Ryan finished setting their course. The older man's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. I served the royal family for 30 years, he replied, his voice carefully neutral. I watched Princess Seralia grow from a child into the woman she became, intelligent, compassionate, determined to use her position for genuine good rather than personal gain. A hint of pride crept into his tone. In a system designed to create entitled rulers, she became something rare, a true leader. You loved her, Dex realized. Not romantically, perhaps, but with the deep devotion of someone who had found something worth believing in. Ryan met his gaze unflinchingly. I believed in what she stood for. Still do. He glanced at the bag containing Lyra's core. Even in this form. From within the bag, Lyra's voice emerged, soft but clear. And I have never forgotten your loyalty, old friend. Not even when my memories were fragmented and confused. A comfortable silence fell between the three unlikely allies as the shuttle carried them toward their rendezvous with the Resistance, each lost in their own thoughts about the path that had brought them to this moment and the uncertain future that lay ahead. For Dex, what had begun as a stroke of luck in a poker game had evolved into something he had never expected to find again after so many disappointments. A purpose. Whether that purpose would lead to triumph or tragedy remained to be seen. But for the first time in years, he was following something other than the path of least resistance. And surprisingly, despite the danger and uncertainty, it felt right. The journey to the Vega sector took 3 days. 3 days of careful navigation through Imperial checkpoints. Tense moments when patrol cruisers came too close for comfort. And long stretches of hyperspace travel during which Dex, Ryan, and Lyra continued to learn about each other and plan their next moves. During those quieter moments, Dex noticed something curious. Lyra was changing, not dramatically, but in subtle ways that became more apparent the longer he spent with her. Her speech patterns were becoming more fluid, less formal. She made references to memories that she had previously claimed were inaccessible, and most notably, her emotional responses seemed more complex, more authentically human. I've been meaning to ask, he said during one of their planning sessions, while Ryan was running maintenance on the shuttle systems. Are you evolving somehow? Your personality seems different than when we first met. Lyra's core pulsed thoughtfully before she answered. I believe I am healing, in a sense. When my consciousness was first transferred into this digital form, the process was traumatic. Many of my memories and personality components were fragmented, corrupted, or deliberately suppressed by my father's technicians. But now they're coming back? Dex prompted. Yes, being active, engaging with you and now with Ryan. It seems to be repairing those neural pathways. The more I interact, the more complete I become. Her voice took on a note of wonder. It's as though I'm remembering how to be myself. Dex considered this. That's why you've been quoting poetry less often, he realized. That wasn't really you, was it? Not entirely, Lyra admitted. The romantic poetry protocols were programmed as a form of mockery. My father's cruel joke. A princess who had defied him to prevent suffering would be reduced to spouting sentimental verses while serving as a utilitarian navigation system. Her voice hardened slightly. It was meant to be humiliating. Your father sounds like a real piece of work, Dex commented, anger simmering beneath his casual tone. He was a product of generations of absolute power, Lyra replied, with a complexity of emotion that spoke to her recovering humanity. That doesn't excuse his actions, but it perhaps explains them, which is why breaking the cycle matters so much. Their conversation was interrupted as Ryan returned to the main cabin. We're approaching the trading outpost, he announced. "I've made contact with my associate there. She's expecting us." The outpost, when it came into view, was an impressive construction and sprawling space station built from connected modules of various origins, surrounded by a constant flow of merchant vessels from dozens of systems. As a free trading zone operating outside imperial jurisdiction, it served as a neutral ground where political differences were temporarily set aside in the name of commerce. "Another advantage of meeting here," Ryan explained, as they docked at a private berth, "is that the station's governing council strictly enforces a no imperial entanglements policy. Any attempt by imperial forces to operate here would result in immediate blockade of imperial trade vessels throughout the sector." "Economic deterrence," Dex nodded appreciatively. "Effective. For now," Ryan agreed, "though the Empire grows bolder by the day." They disembarked cautiously, Dex once again carrying Lyra's core in the specially designed bag. Ryan led them through the bustling corridors of the trading station, past shops selling goods from across the galaxy, and traders haggling in a dozen different languages. Eventually, they reached a nondescript door marked only with a stylized image of a balance scale. Ryan placed his palm against a hidden scanner, and the door slid open to reveal a comfortable but Spartan meeting room. Waiting inside was a woman who radiated quiet authority, despite her unassuming appearance. "Commander Ryan," she greeted him with a respectful nod. "It's been too long." "Admiral Voss," he returned the greeting. "Thank you for agreeing to meet on such short notice." Dex's eyebrows shot up at the title. Admiral was a rank reserved for the highest echelons of the Imperial fleet. That someone of such status was now meeting with them in secret spoke volumes about the extent of dissatisfaction within the Empire's own military. "This is Dex Mallory," Ryan continued with the introductions. "And—" he glanced at the bag Dex carried. "And I believe I can introduce myself," Lyra interjected, as Dex carefully placed her core on the conference table. "Admiral Voss. It's been many years." The Admiral's composed expression gave way to momentary shock. "Princess Seralia? But how?" "It's a long story," Lyra replied. "One I will gladly share. But first, we need to know how much of the resistance network remains intact." Admiral Voss recovered her composure quickly, the calculating look of a career strategist returning to her eyes. "Less than a third of what we had during your father's reign," she admitted. "Your brother has been ruthlessly efficient in rooting out dissent. Many of our best operatives have been captured or killed. Others have gone so deep undercover that even I don't know their locations." "But you still have resources," Ryan pressed. "Contacts within the Imperial command structure." "Some," Voss acknowledged cautiously. "Though fewer with each passing month. Why? What exactly are you planning?" Lyra's core pulsed with determination as she outlined their intention to broadcast the evidence of Malik's war crimes via the Nexus communication hub. As she spoke, the Admiral's expression grew increasingly troubled. "What you're proposing is virtually suicidal," she said when Lyra had finished. "Nexus Station is the most secure Imperial facility outside the palace itself. The moment you approach, you'll be identified and destroyed." "Not if we have the right credentials and approach vector," Ryan countered. "Your position before your retirement would have given you access to the command codes and security protocols." Voss shook her head. "Those would have been changed the moment my loyalty became suspect. However," she paused, considering, "there may be another way. Something that wouldn't rely on outdated access codes." "We're all ears," Dex prompted, when she didn't immediately continue. The Admiral moved to a secure terminal and activated it, bringing up schematics of what appeared to be Nexus Station. 3 months ago, one of our deep cover operatives reported a scheduled maintenance upgrade to Nexus's primary communication array. The work is being carried out by Helios Engineering, a private contractor with high-level Imperial clearance. If we could pose as Helios engineers, Ryan began, seeing where she was heading. You'd have legitimate access to the communication systems, Voss confirmed. At least long enough to upload and initiate a broadcast. Can you get us the necessary credentials? Dex asked. Identification, work orders, whatever they'd need to check? Voss nodded slowly. I still have contacts within the bureaucracy who owe me favors. Nothing that would expose them to serious risk, but enough to provide convincing documentation. She turned to face Lyra's core directly. But you should understand what you're asking of these people. Your Highness, if your broadcast succeeds, it won't just damage your brother. It will shake the foundations of the entire Imperial system. Many who are currently protected by that system, including some who secretly support our cause, will suffer in the aftermath. I am well aware of the potential consequences, Admiral, Lyra replied solemnly. I have had 5 years of solitude to consider them. But the alternative is to allow Malik's crimes to go unpunished, and to permit a system that enabled those crimes to continue unchallenged. A tense silence filled the room as the weight of the decision settled on all present. Finally, Admiral Voss straightened her shoulders with military precision. Very well. I will provide what assistance I can. But understand this. Once you initiate the broadcast, there will be no extraction plan, no rescue. You will be on your own in the heart of enemy territory. We understand, Ryan affirmed, his cybernetic eye glinting with resolve. Dex said nothing, but his hand moved unconsciously to rest protectively near Lyra's core. The stakes had just become exponentially higher, and the prospect of a triumphant victory increasingly remote. What had begun as a desperate flight from Imperial forces was evolving into what might well be a suicide mission. Yet, despite the grim outlook, he felt no inclination to back away. Whether it was Lyra's unwavering determination, Ryan's steadfast loyalty, or something awakening within himself that he had long thought dead, Dex couldn't say. But the decision, when it came, required no internal debate. How soon can we move? He asked simply. The maintenance is scheduled for 3 days from now, Admiral Voss replied. We have until then to prepare you as thoroughly as possible. And with that, the die was cast, in a small, unmarked room on a trading station far from the Imperial core. 4 individuals, a deposed princess, trapped in digital form, a disgraced pilot seeking redemption, a loyal protector fueled by unwavering belief, and a rebel admiral fighting from the shadows, committed themselves to an act that would either change the course of galactic history or end their lives in obscurity and failure. For Dex Mallory, who had spent a lifetime avoiding commitment and consequence, it was a strange feeling to embrace both so completely. But as he looked at Lyra's gently pulsing core, he realized that some things, some people, were worth the risk. The 3 days of preparation passed in a blur of intense activity. Admiral Voss proved to be as efficient and thorough as her military background suggested, providing not only the promised credentials, but also detailed intelligence on Nexus Station's layout, security protocols, and staff rotations. Ryan focused on weaponry and tactical planning, calculating the precise timing required for each phase of their infiltration. If things went according to plan, they wouldn't need to fire a single shot. But Ryan was too experienced to rely on best-case scenarios. Dex, meanwhile, immersed himself in studying the role he would be playing, a senior Helios engineering technician specializing in quantum communications. It required absorbing an overwhelming amount of technical information, much of it beyond his previous experience despite his background as a pilot. Through it all, Lyra remained the calm center of their storm, her recovering memories providing crucial insights into Imperial procedures and hierarchies that even Admiral Voss's intelligence couldn't supply. With each passing hour, she seemed to become more fully herself, the princess and resistance leader who had once challenged an empire from within. On the morning of the third day, they gathered one final time with Admiral Voss to review the plan. "The maintenance window opens at 800 hours Imperial Standard Time," she reminded them, indicating the relevant section on the station schematic. "You'll dock at Service Bay 4, proceed through security checks where your credentials will be verified, then be escorted to Communication Hub Alpha, where we'll have approximately 30 minutes to complete the actual maintenance and install our broadcast package," Ryan continued, now intimately familiar with the timeline. "After which, security protocols dictate a full diagnostic scan, which is when they'll discover the unauthorized modifications," Dex added grimly. "At which point we'll have perhaps 2 minutes before the entire station goes into lockdown. If everything goes perfectly," Lyra concluded. "The broadcast will begin streaming to all Imperial channels simultaneously, with priority overrides that will make it difficult to silence immediately. Even a few minutes of transmission would be enough to ensure the information spreads beyond the Empire's ability to contain it." Admiral Voss nodded solemnly. "I've arranged for resistance cells throughout the core systems to be ready to capture and rebroadcast the signal through independent channels. Once released, the information will be impossible to completely suppress." She hesitated, then added, "I've also prepared an extraction plan, despite my earlier statement." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "That's not like you, Admiral. You've always been a realist about operational risks." "Consider it a personal favor," Voss replied, her usual military detachment softening slightly. "There's a maintenance vessel scheduled to depart from Bay 7 approximately 10 minutes after your expected broadcast initiation, if you can reach it." "We'd still have to fight our way through the entire station," Ryan pointed out. "True," the Admiral acknowledged, "but it's better than no option at all." The unspoken reality hung in the air. The chances of any of them surviving this mission were vanishingly small. The extraction plan was less a practical escape route and more a gesture of respect, an acknowledgement that their sacrifice deserved at least the dignity of a theoretical alternative. "Thank you, Admiral," Lyra said softly. "For everything." Voss straightened, offering a formal salute to Lyra's corps, a gesture that might have seemed absurd in other circumstances, but here carried profound meaning. "It has been an honor to serve the true heir of Azareth. Your Highness, may your light illuminate the darkness that has fallen over our people." With these solemn words, their final planning session concluded. Admiral Voss departed to ensure her resistance cells were positioned to receive and amplify the broadcast, leaving Dex, Ryan, and Lyra to make their final preparations. As they donned the gray-blue uniforms of Helios engineering technicians, Dex found himself studying his reflection in the shuttle's viewport. The man who looked back at him bore little resemblance to the desperate gambler who had sat down at that poker table on Velon 9, what felt like a lifetime ago. His eyes held a purpose that had been absent for years. "Having second thoughts?" Ryan asked, noticing Dex's contemplative expression as he checked his concealed weapon one last time. "Oddly, no," Dex replied truthfully. "I'm just wondering how I ended up here. A month ago, I was running from debt collectors and looking for my next score. Now I'm about to infiltrate an Imperial stronghold with a princess-turned-AI and a rogue royal guard to overthrow a galactic empire." He shook his head with a bemused smile. "Not exactly how I expected my life to go." "The most meaningful journeys rarely follow expected paths," Lyra observed from her core, which was now concealed within a modified diagnostic device that would allow her to interface with the station's systems while appearing to be standard equipment. "I certainly never anticipated existing as digital consciousness in a glorified data cylinder." "Well, when you put it that way," Dex chuckled, "I guess I got the better end of the deal." Ryan finished his preparations and moved to the pilot seat. We should depart. Our arrival window is precise. Too early or too late would arouse suspicion. As the shuttle disengaged from the trading station and set course for the jump point that would take them to Nexus, a strange calm settled over the three companions. They had planned meticulously, prepared as thoroughly as possible, and now faced whatever fate awaited them with clear eyes and resolved hearts. "Whatever happens," Dex said, as the stars blurred around them with the activation of the faster-than-light drive, "I want you both to know. I'm glad I met you, even under these circumstances." "Likewise," Ryan replied with uncharacteristic warmth. "You've proven yourself a man of unexpected depth, Mallory." "I believe," Lyra added softly, "that some partnerships are written in the stars long before we recognize them ourselves. Perhaps this was always our destiny, to find each other at this precise moment in history." Dex wasn't sure he believed in destiny or fate. His life had been too chaotic, too shaped by poor choices and random chance to fit any cosmic pattern. And yet, winning Lyra in that poker game, against astronomical odds, did sometimes feel like more than mere coincidence. "Maybe," he conceded. "Or maybe we just got lucky. Either way, let's make it count." The journey to Nexus Station passed in contemplative silence. When they emerged from hyperspace, the station loomed before them, a massive structure shaped like a 12-pointed star, with communication arrays extending from each point. The heart of the Empire's propaganda machine and information control apparatus. It represented everything Lyra had once fought against and now sought to undermine. "Helios Engineering Shuttle requesting docking clearance," Ryan transmitted, his voice professionally neutral. "Scheduled maintenance team for Communication Hub Alpha. Authorization code Tau 739 Epsilon." There was a brief pause that seemed to stretch into eternity before the response came. "Authorization confirmed. Helios Shuttle. Proceed to Service Bay 4 for security processing." The first hurdle cleared. They approached the massive station. As they drew closer, the true scale of Nexus became apparent. It housed over 10,000 personnel and was defended by weapon systems that could reduce their small shuttle to atoms in seconds. "Remember," Ryan murmured as they prepared to dock, "confidence is key. We belong here. We're expected. Any hesitation will trigger suspicion." Dex nodded, taking a deep breath to center himself. In his previous life, he had become adept at projecting confidence he didn't feel. Bluffing had been essential to survival in the high-stakes games he frequented. Now, that skill would serve a higher purpose than merely winning credits. The docking procedure went smoothly, the shuttle settling into Service Bay 4 with a gentle thud. As the airlock cycled, Dex carefully shouldered the equipment bag containing Lyra's core, disguised as diagnostic equipment. "Ready?" he asked quietly. The core pulsed once within the bag, a silent affirmation. The moment of truth had arrived. As the airlock doors slid open, Dex and Ryan stepped forward to face the Imperial security detail waiting beyond, their faces composed into masks of professional indifference, despite the thundering of their hearts. The first step into the lion's den had been taken. Now, they could only move forward and hope that their audacious plan might somehow succeed against the overwhelming odds arrayed against them. The security checkpoint was their first significant test. Two Imperial officers in the crisp gray uniforms of station security examined their credentials, while a trio of armed guards stood at attention nearby. Energy rifles held casually, but ready. "Helios Engineering," the senior officer noted, scanning their identification chips. "Purpose of visit?" "Scheduled maintenance on the primary communication array," Ryan replied smoothly. "The phase alignment has been showing fluctuations in the Epsilon band." The officer nodded, seemingly satisfied with the technical explanation. "Equipment?" Dex stepped forward, opening his bag to display the diagnostic devices, including Lyra's disguised core. standard repair kit, plus specialized quantum calibrators for the epsilon band issue. A tense moment followed as a security scanner passed over the equipment. Dex held his breath, acutely aware that any indication of Lyra's true nature would trigger an immediate response from the armed guards. The scanner beeped, and the officer studied the readout. "There's an unusual energy signature from one of your devices." Dex's heart nearly stopped, but his face remained professionally concerned. "The quantum calibrator," he explained, pointing to Lyra's core. "It uses an experimental power source. That's why we're here. The current array configuration isn't fully compatible with the new technology, causing the fluctuations." It was a plausible technical explanation, filled with just enough jargon to sound convincing without being overly complicated. The officer hesitated, then consulted a datapad. "I don't see any notification about experimental technology in the work order." "It should be in the technical addendum," Ryan interjected smoothly. "Submitted by Director Kell 3 days ago. The quantum stabilization protocols require the new calibrator." The mention of a high-ranking official, a name Admiral Voss had provided as someone known for bureaucratic thoroughness, gave the officer pause. After a moment, he nodded. "Very well, but according to protocol, you'll need a security escort while working on critical systems." "Of course," Dex agreed readily, having anticipated this requirement. "We welcome the supervision." With that final hurdle cleared, they were assigned an escort, a stern-faced lieutenant named Terrace, and directed toward Communication Hub Alpha. As they traversed the station's immaculate corridors, Dex was struck by the contrast between the gleaming efficiency of Nexus and the struggling outer worlds he had frequented. Here was the polished face of imperial power, projecting order and prosperity, while planets at the fringes collapsed under exploitation and neglect. "The hub has been isolated for your maintenance window," Lieutenant Terrace informed them as they approached their destination. "Standard procedure for any work on primary communication systems." "Excellent," Ryan replied. "The calibration requires a clean signal environment." The hub itself was impressive, a circular room dominated by a central control pillar, surrounded by monitoring stations and data terminals. Currently unoccupied, except for a single technician who nodded to them as they entered. "I'll need to remain present throughout the procedure," Terrace announced, taking up position near the door. "Of course," Dex agreed amiably, while setting up their equipment. "This should take approximately 25 minutes if all goes well." With practiced movements that belied their recent training, Dex and Ryan began the maintenance procedure, performing the actual required work while simultaneously preparing for their true purpose. Lyra's core remained in the diagnostic device, connected to a terminal that gave her limited access to the system. "Phase alignment showing standard parameters," Ryan reported for the benefit of their escort. "Beginning diagnostic sequence." While Ryan kept up the appearance of routine maintenance, Dex carefully established the secondary connection that would allow Lyra to access the broadcast controls. It was delicate work, requiring him to manipulate components while obscuring his actions from Lieutenant Terrace's view. "We're detecting the epsilon band fluctuation now," Dex announced, giving Lyra the signal that her access path was ready. Initiating quantum calibration. Through their private communication link, Lyra's voice came to him alone. "I'm in the system. Security protocols as expected. Beginning bypass sequence." The next few minutes were agonizingly tense as Lyra worked her way through the station's impressive security measures. Her unique nature gave her advantages no human hacker could match. She could process information at electronic speeds, making adjustments and responses faster than the security systems could track. "Preparing data packet for transmission," she reported privately. "Estimated time to completion, 3 minutes." Dex checked the chronometer. They were still within their maintenance window, but barely. Soon, the routine diagnostic scan would begin, which would detect their unauthorized activities. Lieutenant Terrace shifted position, moving closer to observe their work more directly. "How much longer?" he asked, a note of impatience entering his voice. "Final calibration sequence initiating now," Ryan replied, deliberately vague. "Should resolve the fluctuations completely." The lieutenant nodded, seemingly satisfied, and returned to his position by the door. Dex exhaled slowly, tension making his movements slightly stiff despite his efforts to appear relaxed. "Data packet ready," Lyra announced through their private link. "Awaiting your signal to initiate broadcast." Dex glanced at Ryan, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. This was the point of no return. Once the broadcast began, they would have mere minutes before the entire station was locked down and swarming with security forces. "Executing final calibration now," Dex announced loudly, while simultaneously sending the activation signal to Lyra. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. The hub remained quiet, the screens showing normal operation. Then, one by one, the monitors around the room flickered and changed, displaying a single image: Princess Seralia, as she had appeared 5 years ago, addressing the camera with regal composure. Lieutenant Terrace straightened in alarm. "What is this? Stop the transmission immediately." "I cannot," Lyra replied, through the station's communication system, her voice echoing throughout the hub. "The people of the Empire deserve to know the truth." On every screen, the recorded image of Seralia began to speak. "I am Princess Seralia of House Azareth, rightful heir to the Imperial throne. What you are about to witness is unaltered footage of war crimes committed against the people of Hadrian by Imperial forces under the direct command of my brother. Now, Emperor Malik." Lieutenant Terrace drew his weapon, pointing it at Dex. "Shut it down now." "It's too late," Ryan informed him calmly. "The broadcast has been initiated on all Imperial channels with priority overrides. Nothing short of destroying the entire station will stop it now." The lieutenant's face contorted with fury as he activated his communication device. "Security breach in Communication Hub Alpha. Insurgent broadcast in progress. All available personnel respond immediately." Even as alarms began to blare throughout the station, the screens continued to display damning evidence, recorded orders from Malik authorizing the deployment of banned bioweapons, footage of civilian settlements being engulfed in clouds of lethal agents, and most damning of all, Malik's cold observation as he watched the death toll rise. An acceptable sacrifice to ensure compliance in the sector. "You've committed treason against the Empire," Terrace snarled, his weapon still trained on Dex. "You'll be executed for this." "Perhaps," Dex acknowledged, "but the truth will outlive us." In that moment, the station's resident technician made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. Instead of supporting the lieutenant, he lunged forward and tackled Terrace from behind, sending the officer's weapon clattering across the floor. "Go!" the technician shouted as he struggled with the lieutenant. "My sister was on Hadrian. I've suspected the official story was a lie for years. Go!" Ryan didn't hesitate, retrieving the fallen weapon and moving swiftly to the door. Dex quickly disconnected Lyra's core from the system and secured it in the equipment bag. "The extraction point?" he asked urgently as they left the hub. "Bay 7, Ryan confirmed. "But we'll need to fight our way there. The entire station will be looking for us now." Already, they could hear the pounding of boots as security teams mobilized. The broadcast continued throughout the station, impossible to ignore, as Seralia's voice calmly detailed atrocities that had been hidden from the public for years. "Wait," Lyra's voice came from within the bag. "I've identified an alternative route. Maintenance Tunnel 14B runs parallel to the main corridor and bypasses 2 security checkpoints." Ryan located the access panel for the maintenance tunnel, and they slipped inside just as a squad of armed security personnel rounded the corner. The tunnel was narrow and dimly lit, filled with conduits and junction boxes that made progress difficult. "How much of the broadcast has gone out?" Dex asked, as they moved as quickly as possible through the confined space. "Approximately 40%, Lyra reported. "The core evidence is transmitting now. Imperial technicians are attempting to override the priority protocols, but the distributed nature of the broadcast is making it difficult for them to silence all channels simultaneously." "So we've succeeded," Dex realized. "Even if we don't make it out, the truth is spreading." "Let's focus on making it out anyway," Ryan suggested grimly, leading them through the labyrinthine maintenance passages. "Success is sweeter when you live to see its effects." They emerged from the maintenance tunnel near Bay 7, only to find their path blocked by a security detail guarding the entrance. 6 armed officers stood in formation, clearly expecting trouble. "Options," Dex whispered, ducking back into cover. Ryan assessed the situation with a veteran's eye. "Frontal assault would be suicide. We need a diversion." "I may be able to help," Lyra interjected. "My connection to the station's systems is limited now, but I still have access to certain environmental controls." "What did you have in mind?" Dex asked. "Fire suppression systems," Lyra explained. "If I trigger them in this section, the resulting confusion might create an opening." Ryan nodded approvingly. "Do it." A moment later, alarms blared and white foam began spraying from ceiling nozzles throughout the corridor, including where the security detail stood guard. The officers reacted with surprise and confusion, momentarily distracted as they were doused with the sticky fire suppression compound. "Now!" Ryan ordered, bursting from cover with weapon raised. Instead of firing, however, he used the weapon as a bluff, shouting, "Imperial security! Emergency evacuation in progress! Clear the bay immediately!" The confusion worked in their favor. Between the alarms, the spraying foam, and Ryan's authoritative command, the guards hesitated just long enough for Dex and Ryan to push past them into the bay, where the maintenance vessel Admiral Voss had mentioned waited with its engines already warming up. "They're imposters," one officer finally realized, raising his weapon to fire. But it was too late. Ryan and Dex were already aboard the vessel, sealing the airlock behind them. "Can you fly this thing?" Ryan asked, as they rushed to the cockpit. "I can fly anything," Dex replied, with the confidence of a born pilot, sliding into the control seat and rapidly assessing the unfamiliar console. "Though I'll need about 30 seconds to figure out this particular configuration." "We don't have 30 seconds, Ryan warned, looking at the external cameras where security forces were converging on the vessel, heavy weapons now being brought to bear. "Then I'll have to learn while we move," Dex decided, engaging the engines and releasing the docking clamps without completing the standard pre-flight sequence. The vessel shuddered in protest but responded to his commands, pulling away from the docking port with a screech of metal as the clamps tore free. "They're locking weapons on us," Ryan reported tensely. "Initiating emergency thrust," Dex responded, pushing the engines beyond safety parameters. The maintenance vessel lurched forward, accelerating toward the bay doors, which were already beginning to close. "We're not going to make it," Ryan realized, watching the massive doors slowly coming together. "Yes, we are," Dex insisted, his hands flying over the controls as he pushed the vessel to its limits. "But it's going to be close. Brace for impact." The vessel shot forward, aiming for the narrowing gap between the closing bay doors. At the last possible moment, Dex rotated the ship 90 degrees, allowing them to slip through sideways with mere inches to spare. The hull screamed in protest as it scraped against the doors, but they made it through into open space. "Clear!" Dex announced triumphantly, setting course away from the station at maximum speed. Their elation was short-lived. Almost immediately, alarms blared throughout the cockpit. "Imperial cruiser moving to intercept," Ryan warned, monitoring the tactical display. "And they've launched fighters." We're significantly outgunned and outmaneuvered. Dex's mind raced through their limited options. The maintenance vessel had minimal defensive capabilities and no weapons. Their only advantage was Dex's piloting skill, but against trained Imperial pilots in superior craft, even that might not be enough. "We need a distraction," he muttered, scanning the sensor readings for anything that might help. His eyes fell on a nearby asteroid field, not as dense as the Calderon Belt, but potentially useful. "If I can get us into those asteroids, we might be able to lose them long enough to make a jump to hyperspace." "The hyperdrive on this vessel isn't designed for combat conditions," Ryan cautioned. "It needs at least 2 minutes of uninterrupted preparation before jump." "Then I'll have to buy us 2 minutes," Dex replied grimly, altering course toward the asteroid field. Behind them, the Imperial fighters closed rapidly, energy weapons lancing out and grazing their hull. The maintenance vessel shuddered under the assault, warning lights flashing across the console. "Shields at 60% and falling," Ryan reported calmly, despite the dire situation. "We won't survive sustained fire." They reached the edge of the asteroid field, Dex immediately threading them between two massive rocks. The Imperial fighters followed, their superior maneuverability allowing them to keep pace. "Begin preparing the hyperdrive," Dex ordered. "I'll keep them busy." What followed was a masterclass in desperate piloting. Dex pushed the maintenance vessel through maneuvers it was never designed to perform, using the asteroids as both shields and weapons. When a fighter got too close, he would suddenly change course, causing the pursuer to swerve to avoid collision, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. "One fighter down," Ryan noted, as an Imperial craft misjudged its approach and clipped an asteroid, sending it spinning out of control. "3 remaining, plus the cruiser holding position at the edge of the field." "Hyperdrive status?" Dex asked, sweat beading on his forehead as he executed another tight turn between two converging asteroids. 90 seconds to jump capability," Ryan replied, dividing his attention between the tactical display and the hyperdrive controls. Another volley of enemy fire struck their vessel, causing a secondary explosion somewhere in the aft section. The ship lurched violently, nearly sending Dex into the control panel. "Shields critical," Ryan reported. "Hull breach in the storage compartment. Emergency containment holding. But we're losing power." From the equipment bag secured beside Dex, Lyra's voice emerged, calm but urgent. "The broadcast has reached 80% completion. Reports are already coming in of civil unrest in 3 core systems as the information spreads." Despite their dire situation, Dex felt a surge of satisfaction. Whatever happened to them now, they had accomplished their primary objective. The truth was out, spreading across the Empire like wildfire, impossible to contain. 60 seconds to jump," Ryan updated. "But our power levels are dropping. We may not have enough for a successful transition." Another hit rocked the vessel, sending sparks flying from a nearby console. Dex's controls became sluggish as system after system began to fail. "We need more power," he insisted, fighting to maintain control of the increasingly unresponsive ship. "There's only one option," Lyra said quietly. "My core contains significant energy reserves, enough to power the hyperdrive for a single jump if redirected properly." The implications struck Dex immediately. "No, absolutely not. We're not sacrificing you." "It's not a sacrifice if it's a choice," Lyra corrected gently. "And this is my choice. My mission was to reveal the truth about my brother's crimes. That mission is now complete." "There has to be another way," Dex argued, even as he executed another evasive maneuver to avoid enemy fire. "There isn't," Ryan confirmed grimly, having run the calculations. "We have critical damage to the power distribution system. Without an additional power source, the hyperdrive will fail." Dex fell silent, emotions warring within him. In the short time he had known Lyra, she had become more than just a mission or a cause. She had become someone he cared for deeply, someone whose courage and conviction had awakened similar qualities within himself. 30 seconds to jump, Ryan announced. Decision time. Through a gap in the asteroids, they could see the Imperial cruiser repositioning, preparing to cut off any escape route. The remaining fighters continued their pursuit, their attacks growing more coordinated as they adapted to Dex's evasive tactics. "Dex," Lyra said softly, her voice carrying an intimacy that transcended her digital nature. "Let me do this. Let me complete what we started together." A tense moment passed as Dex struggled with the decision. Finally, with great reluctance, he nodded. "How do we do it?" Ryan moved quickly, retrieving Lyra's core from the bag and connecting it to the ship's power distribution system via an emergency bypass. "Ready when you are," he told Lyra. "Before I do this," Lyra said, her voice now coming through the ship's communication system, "I want you both to know what an honor it has been to fight alongside you. Ryan, my old friend, your loyalty has been my strength through the darkest times. And Dex," her voice softened, "you gave me back my purpose when you could have simply walked away. You showed me that the human spirit is capable of extraordinary growth, even in the most unlikely circumstances." "Lyra, please," Dex began, emotion making his voice rough. 20 seconds to jump," Ryan interrupted gently. "Imperial forces converging." "Initiating power transfer," Lyra announced. The lights throughout the cockpit dimmed as energy flowed from her core into the ship's systems. The hyperdrive indicators began to stabilize, power levels rising toward the threshold needed for jump. "It's working," Ryan confirmed. 10 seconds to jump capability. As the power transferred, Lyra's voice became increasingly distorted. "Remember what we fought for. The truth deserves defenders." "Jump capability achieved," Ryan announced. "Coordinates locked. Initiating in 3, 2, 1. The stars stretched around them as the hyperdrive engaged, carrying them away from their pursuers and into the relative safety of hyperspace. In the sudden quiet that followed, Dex looked down at Lyra's core, now dark and lifeless, its energy depleted to save their lives. "Did she?" he began, unable to complete the question. Ryan examined the core carefully. "Her consciousness appears to be offline, whether it's permanent or not. I can't say. This technology is beyond my expertise." Dex gently disconnected the core from the power system, cradling it in his hands. It was cool to the touch, the soft blue glow that had become so familiar now completely absent. "She saved us," he said quietly. "Again." "She completed her mission," Ryan corrected, though his voice held the same sense of loss. "The truth is out. Whatever happens next, the Empire will never be the same." As the maintenance vessel limped through hyperspace, running on borrowed time and borrowed power, Dex continued to hold the darkened core close. He refused to believe that Lyra was truly gone, not after everything they had survived together. "We'll find a way to bring you back," he promised softly. "Whatever it takes." Whether his words were heard or merely echoed in the empty cockpit, he couldn't know. But the promise itself felt important. A commitment to continue what they had started together, to see this journey through to its end, whatever that might be. The Empire was changing, truth spreading like light after a long darkness. And somewhere within that darkened core, perhaps a spark of consciousness remained, waiting to be rekindled. In the days that followed their escape from Nexus Station, the Empire began to fracture. The evidence of Malik's crimes, broadcast across every Imperial channel and subsequently shared through countless independent networks, created exactly the kind of upheaval Admiral Voss had predicted. Protests erupted on core worlds. Military units refused orders. Outer systems declared independence. And at the heart of it all, Emperor Malik desperately attempted to maintain control, denouncing the broadcast as rebel propaganda while ordering increasingly brutal crackdowns on dissent. Dex and Ryan watched these developments from a distance, having found temporary refuge on a remote outpost beyond Imperial jurisdiction. Their stolen maintenance vessel had barely survived the journey, limping into port with failing systems and depleted power reserves. Throughout their flight, Dex had kept Lyra's darkened core close, refusing to accept that she might be permanently gone. Each night, he would connect it to various power sources, hoping for some sign of reactivation, some indication that her consciousness remained intact within the silent hardware. 7 days after their broadcast, as Dex was performing this ritual once again, Ryan entered their modest quarters with news. "Malik is dead," he announced without preamble. "Assassinated by his own guard captain during a particularly brutal order to fire on civilian protesters. The Imperial Palace is under the control of a provisional government led by former Admiral Voss and others from the Resistance." Dex absorbed this information, his hands still cradling Lyra's unresponsive core. "She should be here to see this," he said quietly. "It was her victory more than anyone's." Ryan nodded solemnly, then held out a small data chip. "This arrived for us through secured channels, from the provisional government." Dex took the chip and inserted it into their communication terminal. Admiral Voss's face appeared, looking tired but resolute. "If you're receiving this, you somehow survived against impossible odds," she began. "The Empire is in transition. Malik's death has created an opportunity for genuine reform, though the path forward remains uncertain. Your broadcast changed everything, revealed truths that could no longer be denied." She paused, her expression softening slightly. "I've been informed of Princess Seralia's sacrifice. Our technical division believes there may be a way to restore her consciousness, if her core remains intact. The Imperial Science Division was conducting research on consciousness transfer, the same technology used to imprison her initially. If you can bring her to the capital, our best specialists will attempt restoration." The message concluded with coordinates and security protocols for a safe approach to the Imperial capital. Dex stared at the screen long after it went dark, hope warring with suspicion in his mind. "It could be a trap," Ryan cautioned, always the security expert. "A way to lure us back within their reach." "Or it could be genuine," Dex countered. "Voss struck me as honorable, even if ruthlessly practical." "The question is whether we're willing to take that risk," Ryan said, studying Dex carefully. "The Empire is in chaos. We could simply disappear, find some quiet corner of the galaxy far from Imperial politics." Dex looked down at the darkened core in his hands. The choice seemed clear to him, though he understood Ryan's caution. "If there's any chance of bringing her back, I have to try," he said simply. "After everything she sacrificed, everything she endured, she deserves that chance." Ryan nodded, having expected this response. "Then we go to the capital, but we go carefully, with every precaution." 2 days later, they were approaching the Imperial capital, their stolen vessel replaced with a more anonymous transport acquired through the provisional government's channels. The once imposing Imperial defenses were still in place, but the atmosphere had changed. Security seemed focused on maintaining order, rather than projecting power. Following the provided protocols, they were granted clearance to land at a secure facility outside the main government complex. As promised, Admiral Voss herself was waiting to greet them, accompanied by a small security detail and what appeared to be a team of scientists. "You actually made it," she remarked with genuine surprise as they disembarked. "I calculated your survival probability at less than 8%. "We had help," Dex replied, carefully carrying the container with Lyra's core. Voss nodded toward the core. Is that her? What's left of her, Dex confirmed. She depleted her energy to power our escape. The Admiral signaled to one of the scientists, an older woman with striking white hair and intense focus. This is Dr. Alara Venn, our leading expert on consciousness transfer technology. If anyone can help the princess, it's her. Dr. Venn approached, examining the core with professional interest. May I? She asked, extending her hands. With reluctance, Dex allowed her to take the container. The doctor opened it carefully, studying the darkened core. Fascinating, she murmured. The architecture is unlike anything in our current research. Whoever designed this was decades ahead of conventional science. Can you help her? Dex asked directly. Dr. Venn considered the question seriously before answering. Possibly. The core itself appears intact, merely depleted of energy. If the consciousness matrix was properly shielded during the power transfer, restoration might be feasible. She looked up at Dex, her expression cautious, but not without hope. But I must be clear. This technology is experimental. There are no guarantees. What do you need from us? Ryan asked. Time, the doctor replied simply. And any information you can provide about how the core functioned when active. Behavioral patterns, memory retrieval methods, emotional responses. Anything that might help us understand how her consciousness was integrated with the hardware. You'll have whatever you need, Dex promised. Just bring her back. The following weeks were an exercise in patience and cautious hope. While the provisional government worked to stabilize an empire in transition, Dr. Venn and her team labored to understand and potentially restore Lyra's consciousness. Dex spent hours with the research team, describing in detail how Lyra had communicated, how her personality had evolved over time, and the methods they had used to interface with various systems. Ryan contributed his own observations, particularly regarding the changes he had noticed between the Princess Seralia he had known and the digital consciousness she had become. Meanwhile, beyond the laboratory walls, the galaxy continued to transform. News of Malik's crimes and the revelation of Princess Seralia's fate had created a groundswell of support for significant reforms. The provisional government, aware of the fragility of their position, moved cautiously but deliberately toward a more representative system. 3 weeks into the restoration attempt, Dr. Venn requested Dex's presence in the laboratory. When he arrived, he found her looking both excited and apprehensive. We've made a breakthrough, she announced without preamble. We've managed to establish a minimal power flow that doesn't trigger the core's security protocols. There are signs of activity, fragmentary but distinct. Dex's heart raced. She's alive? In a manner of speaking, the doctor qualified. We're detecting organized data patterns consistent with consciousness, but they're incomplete, disjointed. It's as if... She paused, searching for an appropriate analogy. It's as if she's dreaming, but can't quite wake up. What's preventing full restoration? Dr. Venn sighed. The core's architecture includes safeguards we don't fully understand. When she transferred power to your ship, it wasn't a simple energy depletion. She appears to have intentionally fragmented her consciousness as a protection mechanism. The primary personality matrix is intact, but dormant, while smaller fragments remain active, maintaining essential functions. So, what's the next step? Dex asked, trying to make sense of the technical explanation. We believe we need a catalyst, something familiar, something significant that might help the fragments recognize each other and reintegrate. The doctor looked at him thoughtfully. Someone she trusts, speaking to her directly while we attempt to synchronize the fragments. Me, Dex realized. You were with her through the most recent and formative experiences of her digital existence. Dr. Venn confirmed. If anyone can reach her, it's likely to be you. The procedure was arranged for the following day. The laboratory was reconfigured, equipment positioned to channel specific energy patterns through Lyra's core while monitoring the results. Dex sat beside the core, uncertain what to say, but determined to try anything that might help. "We're ready to begin," Dr. Venn announced from her position at the main control panel. "Speak to her normally. Share memories, experiences, anything that might resonate with her consciousness." Dex took a deep breath, feeling slightly self-conscious with the research team observing, but focused on the darkened core before him. "Hey, Lyra," he began awkwardly. "It's Dex. We made it out, thanks to you. Your broadcast worked. The truth is out there, changing everything. Just like you hoped." He paused, searching for words. "Malik is gone. The Empire is transforming. You won. Lyra, you actually did it." The core remained dark, the monitoring equipment showing only minimal response. Dr. Venn nodded encouragingly for him to continue. Dex leaned closer, his voice dropping to a more intimate tone. "Remember when we first met? You started reciting poetry, and I thought you were the strangest AI I'd ever encountered." A small smile touched his lips at the memory. "I had no idea what I was getting into. No idea how much you would change everything, not just the Empire, but me." As he spoke, the researchers noticed a subtle shift in the core's energy patterns. Dr. Venn adjusted controls, enhancing certain frequencies while dampening others. "That's it," she murmured. "Keep going. There's definitely a response." Encouraged, Dex continued, his initial self-consciousness fading as he focused entirely on reaching Lyra. He spoke of their escape through the asteroid field, their meetings with the archivist and Admiral Voss, the dangerous infiltration of Nexus Station. With each memory shared, the response from the core grew stronger, though still fragmented. "You once told me that some partnerships are written in the stars," Dex said, recalling their conversation before the Nexus mission. "I didn't really believe that then. My life had been too random, too shaped by bad luck and worse decisions to fit any kind of pattern." He paused, emotion making his voice rough. "But now I'm not so sure. Meeting you, saving you, being saved by you, it feels like more than coincidence." As he spoke these words, the core's energy patterns suddenly spiked, converging in a way that caused several researchers to exclaim in surprise. Dr. Venn frantically adjusted controls, attempting to stabilize and enhance the reaction. "The fragments are aligning," she reported excitedly. "The dormant personality matrix is showing signs of activation." Encouraged, Dex pressed on, no longer caring about the observers, speaking directly to the consciousness he refused to believe was lost. "You showed me that some things are worth fighting for, even when the odds are impossible. You made me better than I was, Lyra. And I'm not ready to say goodbye." The core began to emit a faint blue glow, weak at first, but steadily intensifying. The monitoring equipment registered increasing coherence in the energy patterns, fragmentary data streams beginning to merge into more organized structures. "It's working," Dr. Venn whispered, awe evident in her voice. "The consciousness fragments are reintegrating." The blue glow continued to strengthen, pulsing now in a rhythm that reminded Dex of breathing, or perhaps a heartbeat. For several tense minutes, the research team watched as the core's systems reactivated one by one, energy flowing through pathways that had been dormant since the desperate escape from Nexus Station. Then, finally, a voice, faint and slightly distorted, but unmistakably Lyra's, emerged from the core. "Dex? Is that really you?" The room erupted in excited murmurs as researchers hurried to document the successful reactivation. Dex, however, was oblivious to everything except the glowing core before him. "It's me," he confirmed, joy and relief making his voice unsteady. "We made it, Lyra. We're safe." "The broadcast?" she asked, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Did it reach enough systems?" "It reached everywhere," Dex assured her. "The whole Empire knows the truth now. Malik is gone. Things are changing. Really changing this time." There was a pause as Lyra seemed to process this information. "And you kept me, even when I appeared non-functional." "Of course I kept you," Dex replied, as if the alternative was unthinkable. "We're partners, remember?" The core pulsed brighter, and when Lyra spoke again, her voice carried a complexity of emotion that confirmed her consciousness had indeed been restored. "I remember," she said softly. "Everything." Over the following days, Lyra's recovery continued, her systems stabilizing as her consciousness fully reintegrated. Dr. Venn and her team worked to provide a more sustainable power source for the core, ensuring that what had happened at Nexus Station could never happen again. As Lyra regained her strength, she was brought fully up to date on the changes sweeping through the Empire, the provisional government's efforts to establish a more representative system, the ongoing revelations about Malik's regime, and the public's growing awareness of her own story. "They're calling you a hero," Dex told her one evening, in the private quarters they had been assigned within the government complex. "The princess who sacrificed everything to reveal the truth." "Heroes are rarely as heroic as legends suggest," Lyra replied thoughtfully. "I made many mistakes before finding the right path, and I would have accomplished nothing without you and Ryan." "Speaking of Ryan," Dex said, "he's been offered a position heading the new government's security division. He's considering it." "He would be excellent in such a role," Lyra observed. "His loyalty has always been to principles, rather than individuals or systems. The new government would be fortunate to have him." Dex nodded in agreement, then hesitated before asking the question that had been on his mind. "And what about you? Admiral Voss mentioned that the Provisional Council would welcome your input, given your unique perspective." The core pulsed in what Dex had come to recognize as Lyra's equivalent of contemplative silence. "I've been considering their offer," she admitted. "My experiences, both as princess and as whatever I am now, provide insights that could be valuable during this transition." "But," Dex prompted, sensing her reservation. "But I'm not certain I wish to remain within the Imperial system, even a reformed one," Lyra continued. "My existence now is unprecedented, neither fully human nor truly artificial. Perhaps there is value in exploring that unique perspective beyond the constraints of political service." Dex understood the unspoken question beneath her words. "And what about us?" he asked directly. "Where do I fit in these considerations?" The core's glow warmed to a deeper blue, a change Dex had come to associate with Lyra's more personal, emotional responses. "That depends entirely on what you want. Dex Mallory, you've fulfilled any obligation you might have felt. Your debt, if there ever was one, has been paid many times over." "It was never about obligation," Dex replied honestly. "Not after the first few days, anyway." "Then what was it about?" Lyra asked, her tone suggesting she already knew the answer, but needed to hear it articulated. Dex struggled to put into words the complex evolution of his feelings, how initial curiosity had become respect. Respect had become admiration, and admiration had transformed into something deeper that defied simple categorization. "It was about finding someone worth changing for," he said finally. "Someone who saw possibilities in me that I'd stopped seeing in myself." The core pulsed brightly at his words. "And now, with the Empire changing and our mission complete?" "Now we have choices," Dex replied. "Real ones. Maybe for the first time. I've been offered a position too, pilot instructor for the restructured fleet. Apparently, our escape from Nexus impressed some important people. That would suit your talents well, Lyra observed. You are an exceptional pilot. I am, Dex agreed without false modesty. But I'm not sure I want to be tied to the capital any more than you do. He hesitated, then pressed forward. There's a lot of galaxy out there. A lot of places where the truth still needs defenders. If you wanted to explore what this new existence means for you, well, every explorer needs a good pilot. The offer hung between them. Not quite a declaration, but more than a casual suggestion. A proposition for a shared future, undefined but full of possibility. You would leave everything behind? Lyra asked. The security, the recognition? Dex smiled. Security has never been my strong suit, and recognition is overrated. Besides, I'm pretty good at starting over. Done it more times than I can count. But this time would be different, Lyra pointed out. This time, you wouldn't be running from something. You'd be moving towards something. Exactly, Dex agreed softly. That's what makes it worth doing. The core's glow pulsed in a rhythm that Dex had come to recognize as Lyra's equivalent of laughter, warm and genuine. A failed pilot and a digital princess, exploring the galaxy together. It sounds like the beginning of a very strange story. The best ones usually are, Dex replied with a grin. So what do you say, princess? Ready for a new adventure? The core glowed its brightest blue, Lyra's voice warm with affection and anticipation. With you as my pilot, always. In the months that followed, the galaxy watched as the Azareth Empire transformed. The provisional government, led by Admiral Voss and other former resistance leaders, methodically dismantled the most oppressive elements of the imperial system while maintaining enough stability to prevent collapse into chaos. Planetary representatives were summoned to form a new legislative body. Military forces were restructured with stronger ethical oversight. The truth about the Hadrian massacre and other imperial crimes became part of the official historical record, taught in schools rather than suppressed. Amid these sweeping changes, the story of Princess Seralia's sacrifice and resurrection captured the public imagination. Many called for her to take a formal role in the new government, perhaps even to reclaim her position as rightful heir to a reformed throne. Delegations arrived at the capital to petition for her involvement, seeing in her unique journey a powerful symbol of transformation and redemption. Yet when these delegations arrived, they found that the princess, or rather, the consciousness that had once been Princess Seralia, had departed, along with the former smuggler who had unwittingly won her in a game of chance. She had quietly left the capital while the new government was still finding its footing. The only ones who knew their destination were Ryan, who had indeed accepted the position as head of the new Security Council, and Admiral Voss, who kept their confidence with characteristic discretion. They'll be back, Ryan told those who inquired. When they're ready. The princess has earned the right to define her own path forward. On the edges of known space, far from the political upheavals of the core systems, a sleek vessel named Nova made its way through an uncharted nebula. It was a custom craft, smaller than a standard transport, but larger than a personal shuttle. Designed for extended exploration with advanced scientific equipment and exceptional maneuverability. In the pilot's chair sat Dex Mallory, his hands moving with practiced ease over the controls as he navigated the swirling gases and electromagnetic disturbances. The viewport revealed spectacular formations of cosmic dust illuminated by distant stars, creating patterns of light and color that seemed almost deliberately artistic in their beauty. "Spectral analysis complete," announced a familiar voice, emanating not from a glowing core in a container, but from an integrated system throughout the ship. The composition includes several rare elements not commonly found in nebulae of this type, recording full data for transmission to the Galactic Scientific Archive. Anything commercially valuable? Dex asked with a grin, knowing the question would provoke a reaction. Always thinking like a smuggler, Lyra chided affectionately. But, as it happens, yes. The concentration of novalite particles is significant, enough to interest research institutions if not mining conglomerates. Their new arrangement had taken some adjustment. Before leaving the capital, Dr. Venn and her team had worked with Lyra to develop a more integrated and expansive system for her consciousness. Rather than being confined to a portable core, she now existed throughout the Nova systems, able to control the ship's functions directly while maintaining her distinct personality and independence. Special interfaces had been installed in each section of the vessel, allowing for more natural interaction between Dex and Lyra. It wasn't a physical body, but it was a significant expansion of Lyra's existence and capabilities. She could perceive through the ship's sensors, process data at electronic speeds, and interact with both the vessel's systems and external networks. In many ways, the Nova had become an extension of Lyra herself, a body of metal and circuits rather than flesh and blood, but one that offered freedoms her royal life had never permitted. We should consider visiting Teleris Station next, Lyra suggested, as they completed their survey of the nebula. They have a renowned xenobiology research center that would be interested in our findings from the Maris system. Teleris is also known for its excellent gambling establishments, Dex noted with exaggerated innocence. A holographic image flickered to life in the co-pilot seat, a visual representation of Lyra that she sometimes used for more personal conversations. The figure resembled Princess Saralia as she had appeared before her transformation, though slightly modified to reflect her evolved sense of self. She gave Dex a knowing look. Your gambling days are behind you, remember? Besides, our last scientific contribution provided more than enough credits to fund our explorations for the next 6 months. Dex laughed. Can't blame a guy for appreciating the classics. But you're right. Teleris for the xenobiologists it is. Their partnership had evolved into something neither could have predicted when they first met. Part scientific expedition, part humanitarian mission, and part personal journey of discovery. They had spent the past months charting unexplored regions, documenting phenomena that had previously escaped scientific attention, and occasionally using their unique skills to help those they encountered along the way. Sometimes, they shared their discoveries with the Galactic Scientific Archive, contributing to the sum of knowledge available to all. Other times, they brought resources or information to struggling colonies on the fringes, places overlooked by the grand political restructuring happening in the core systems. And occasionally, when the situation demanded, they took more direct action, like their intervention on Pelios 4, where they had exposed a criminal syndicate exploiting refugee populations in the wake of the imperial collapse. The local authorities had been stunned when security systems mysteriously turned against the criminals, while a surprisingly well-armed survey vessel provided tactical support for the overwhelmed Planetary Defense Force. Incoming transmission, Lyra announced, interrupting Dex's reminiscence. It's from Ryan. Put him through, Dex replied, straightening slightly in his chair. Messages from the capital were rare and usually significant. Ryan's face appeared on the communication screen, his expression as composed as ever, though Dex thought he detected more gray in the former Royal Guard's hair. Mallory, Ryan greeted him with a nod. Princess, I trust your explorations are proceeding well? Well enough, Dex replied. Though I'm guessing this isn't a social call. Ryan's mouth twitched in what might have been a suppressed smile. Perceptive as always. No, I'm contacting you because of a situation that may require your unique perspectives. What kind of situation? Lyra asked, her holographic form leaning forward with interest. We've discovered evidence that some of your father's more radical research projects did not die with him, Ryan explained grimly. Specifically, the consciousness transfer technology used against you appears to have been further developed at a secret facility beyond Imperial borders. Dex and Lyra exchanged concerned glances. The implications were disturbing. Such technology, if weaponized or commercially exploited, could create unprecedented ethical and existential dilemmas. We've located the facility, Ryan continued, but official intervention is complicated by jurisdictional issues. Moreover, a direct approach by government forces might prompt the researchers to destroy evidence or deploy whatever prototypes they've developed. So you need someone unofficial, Dex deduced. Someone familiar with the technology, but not directly connected to the new government. Someone like us, Lyra added softly. Ryan nodded. The Council would officially disapprove of my contacting you, while unofficially being very grateful for any information you might happen to discover about this facility. Classic deniable operation, Dex observed with a hint of amusement. Some things don't change, even in reformed governments. Political realities rarely align perfectly with ethical imperatives, Ryan acknowledged. That's why figures like yourselves remain essential, operating in the spaces between official capabilities and necessary actions. Lyra's holographic form flickered slightly as she processed the request. If this technology is being developed along the same lines as what was used against me, then there could be others. Dex finished her thought. Other consciousnesses trapped or exploited. It's a possibility we cannot ignore, Ryan confirmed gravely. A moment of silent communication passed between Dex and Lyra, the kind of wordless understanding that had developed between them through shared dangers and triumphs. Send us the coordinates, Dex said finally. We'll check it out. Unofficially. Of course. Of course, Ryan agreed, a hint of relief crossing his stoic features. The data package is being transmitted now. And thank you. Both of you. After the communication ended, Dex turned to Lyra's holographic presence. So much for our visit to Talaris Station. The xenobiologists will have to wait, Lyra agreed, her expression thoughtful. This takes priority. Are you sure? Dex asked gently. This will mean revisiting some painful history for you. The holographic figure met his gaze directly. That's precisely why we must go. No one understands the implications of this technology better than I do. What it means to have one's very self extracted and confined. To exist in a form never meant to house consciousness. Her image flickered slightly, a visual manifestation of emotional intensity. If others are suffering as I did, we have to help them. And if this technology is being developed for wider application, then it could threaten everything the new government is trying to build, Dex concluded. Not to mention creating ethical nightmares on an unprecedented scale. He began calculating a new course, fingers dancing across the navigation console. Looks like the coordinates Ryan sent are in the outer veil, unclaimed territory beyond even the old Imperial boundaries. No wonder the government's hands are tied. The perfect location for continuing forbidden research, Lyra noted. Far from oversight, beyond established jurisdiction. Dex completed the calculations and looked up with a determined expression. Course plotted. We can be there in 3 days at maximum sustainable speed. Then, let's not waste time, Lyra replied, her holographic form dissolving as she redirected her attention to the ship's systems. The engines hummed with increased power as the Nova changed course, leaving the beautiful nebula behind and heading toward the darkness of the outer veil. As the stars streaked past in the familiar patterns of faster-than-light travel, Dex reflected on the journey that had brought them here. What had begun with a lucky hand of cards had evolved into something he could never have imagined. A partnership that transcended conventional definitions. A purpose that gave meaning to his formerly directionless existence. And perhaps most surprisingly, a bond with a consciousness housed in circuits and code that felt more genuine than any human relationship he had known. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Lyra asked, her voice coming through the cockpit speakers. Dex smiled. "Just thinking about how far we've come. From a rusty cargo ship to this custom explorer. From running for our lives to taking on secret missions. From a poker-playing smuggler and an imprisoned princess to whatever we are now," Lyra added thoughtfully. "And what are we now?" Dex asked. The question more sincere than his casual tone suggested. There was a brief pause before Lyra answered, her voice warm with certainty. "Explorers, truth-seekers, perhaps in our own way, guardians of something important. And partners," Dex added softly. "Above all else, partners." "Always," Lyra agreed, the ship's lights dimming slightly in what Dex had come to recognize as her equivalent of an affectionate gesture. "Now and in whatever adventures await us next." The Nova continued its journey toward the outer veil, carrying its unique crew toward new dangers and discoveries. Behind them lay an empire transformed, partly through their actions. Ahead lay uncertainties and challenges that would test their resolve and ingenuity. But between them existed something rare and precious, a connection that had defied imperial power, survived death and resurrection, and transcended the conventional boundaries between human and artificial intelligence. It was a bond forged in the crucible of shared danger and mutual respect, tempered by sacrifice and strengthened by choice. As the ship sailed through the star-flecked void, a simple truth remained at the heart of their journey. Some partnerships truly are written in the stars, bringing together the most unlikely souls at precisely the moment they need each other most. And once formed, such bonds can reshape not only individual destinies, but the very fabric of civilizations. For Dex Mallory, once a failed pilot with nothing to his name but debts and regrets. And for Lyra, once a princess, and now something entirely unique in the galaxy. Their story was still unfolding, a tale of transformation and discovery that had begun with the most improbable of beginnings. I won a rusty spaceship in a poker game.